Welcome into TYT's The Conversation. It is your host, Adrienne Lawrence, and I am joined by a senior reporter for Insider, Ms. Camila Deschalas. Thanks for joining us, Camila.
Thanks so much for having me.
So you're a senior reporter at Business Insider, where you cover the Justice Department, law enforcement, federal courts, and also you had a long stint working in immigration, and last week was wild when it came to immigration. Because after promising to welcome in more than 60,000 refugees fleeing war and religious persecution last week, the Biden administration announced that it would keep the 15,000 refugee cap that was set by the Trump administration, only to turn around and say, wait, we're gonna go back to what we said initially. Why do you think Biden kind of initially went back on his promise?
Well, this was a huge issue for a lot of immigration advocacy groups that, for the past 4 years under the Trump administration really advocated for them to increase the number of refugees that could be admitted to the US. This was a really big selling point for them, especially when Biden promised during his campaign trail that he would increase the number. What we saw under the Obama administration, especially his final year, was that more than 100,000 refugees were admitted into the US. And so people wanted that number of admissions to return back to, the Obama administration, to kind of see that same type of admissions into the US. And so to see him kind of keep up the limit or the number that was admitted under the Trump administration, for a lot of people that felt like a slap in the face, because they were really looking forward to admitting more refugees into the country.
Yes, I'm sure it was pretty jarring for a lot of people. And then to see him kind of flip-flop and go back to initial numbers and what he promised, how do you think this has impacted kind of how individuals view him abroad in terms of immigration policy?
I think the biggest point here is the fact that what you've seen time and time again since Biden won the election is that progressive groups and a lot of advocacy groups are going to hold him accountable to a lot of promises that he made during the campaign trail. And so you saw that time and time again, especially since he's been rolling out a lot of executive orders on immigration, that you find that a lot of advocacy groups want to see him fulfill a lot of the promises that he made. And so this is just one of them. And this is a really big point. You go from, during the final year of Obama administration accepting more than 100,000 refugees, and then go from last year when the Trump administration announced that they would only accept 15,000. That's a stark contrast. And a lot of people want to see the levels return to the previous administration. And so, or the Obama administration. So this is just another kind of promise that Biden has made during the campaign trail. And it just shows that progressive and advocacy groups just want to hold him accountable and make sure that he fulfills those types of promises.
Yes, accountability is very big, especially now that we are no longer with the Trump administration. And we know that Biden's reversal really comes right now as the nation is kind of struggling with the surge of unaccompanied children at the US-Mexico border. And this is an issue that is supposed to be on the plate of Vice President Harris. So how do you think she is going to handle this moving forward?
Her aides have made, especially in the White House, have made this clear distinction that she is playing just a small component of the White House's response to address why there's kind of been this influx of migrants going to the border and arriving and either turning themselves in or being apprehended. And so she's really dealing with the diplomatic component of this, where she is going to start having conversations with presidents of the Central American countries where they're seeing more of a larger number of migrants from those countries come to the US. And I think a lot of the aides that I've talked to that have worked with her when she was the California Attorney General and even during her time at the Senate has said time and time again that she's going to draw from her experience during those times, because that's when she really started building this foundation of her knowledge on immigration policy. And so that's going to be really pivotal part, is that she doesn't have as much foreign relations experience of where, she's conducted these type of diplomatic relations in the past, but she does have extensive experience handling immigration issues and, really understanding the root causes of what is driving a lot of migrants and unaccompanied minors to come to the border and make that long journey.
Yes, she definitely did get some of that experience while being here in the state of California. And hopefully she's able to use her skills abroad. And I also know right here and right now, you do cover the courts. And last week we saw some interesting kind of bills come through, particularly as it concerns the Supreme Court and broadening the number of potential jurists who sit up there as justices. And kind of what's your take on the read of whether this can happen, of whether we can actually go from 9 to 13?
I think this is going to just be a really long debate in the Senate. You see a lot of Democratic lawmakers pushing for this to expand the court. You also have a lot of groups on the ground that are really driving this conversation of what it would look like. And so you've seen kind of in the past few weeks that the Biden administration has kind of tilted their head and said that, hey, we are going to examine what this would look like and what types of recommendations we would make to see if expanding the Supreme Court is a choice to really move forward. He signed an executive order to start a commission to really examine what that would look like. And this is going to be a really contentious issue because you've seen from Republicans, they do not want to expand the court. But this is something that is really a driving force for a lot of Senate Democratic lawmakers right now.
Yeah, and they have pretty good reason because in part, the court right now, as it's stacked as being hyper conservative, it's somewhat problematic in that it is not a significant true reflection of the nation and the values of a lot of people in our country. And so it should be interesting to see how this plays out. But something I was always thinking of as well is how Chief Justice Roberts would be receptive of having a court of 13 as opposed to 9. Do you think he welcomes it?
I think it's divided among the court. What we've heard a lot from some groups that have been, driving these conversations of expanding the court is that they really want a lot of representation. That they want the Supreme Court justices to really reflect America and the diversity that there is in this country. And so I think that's what's really driving this. Biden has pledged that he would nominate a Black female judge to the Supreme Court if there was a seat available. And so a lot of them are saying that, we can't really wait until to see what the election results may be in the midterm election, that we should really try to expand the court now while there's still a slim majority of Democrats controlling the Senate and also the House as well.
Yes, this would definitely be the time to do so. I kind of like to think that Chief Justice Roberts would love to expand the court so he doesn't have to be the swing vote. Because as we've seen recently with a number of significant decisions, he has been the one to side with the generally liberal side, despite being known as a conservative justice. But I think he fully appreciates that there needs to be a little bit of balance. But in terms of your work and what you're doing at Business Insider, is there anything you're working on in particular that you feel is driving change or really getting stories told?
I think something that I'm closely monitoring is these conversations about what police reform looks like at the local level. Like we have seen now that, especially on the federal level, a lot of lawmakers are really driving these conversations and also introducing bills to reform law enforcement. And that's gained some popularity from some groups and animosity towards others. But it's really interesting to kind of see how Congress is going to work together and lawmakers from both parties to work together to try to pass a bill on the federal level that can drastically reform what law enforcement looks like on the state and local level.
Yes, it seems that reform is necessary, as I know there's a big push for reform as well as defunding the police. And we're hearing a lot of voices, especially after we saw last week with the Adam Toledo body cam footage coming out that was absolutely jarring. We're in the middle of the conclusion of the Derek Chauvin trial. And we just saw Daunte Wright, unfortunately, lose his life. And it seems to be a lot of problems, particularly concerning law enforcement and whether we are necessarily getting the truth, but we definitely know we're getting a lot of force being used. So how do you think that lawmakers could best approach it and still maintain their constituent support?
I think there's a lot of concern that they don't want to get too specific within these legislations because not one size fits all in different counties and different districts and states. And so I think they want to be very mindful that they want to still give some autonomy to the state and local level to kind of decide, what they deem is appropriate when it comes to trainings, when it comes to providing more resources. And there's a big question of, what money what money should be allocated to certain resources when it comes to law enforcement. And so I think especially with a lot of the cases and a lot of the shootings that have occurred in these past few weeks, there's going to be a lot of pressure put on lawmakers to get a bill to pass Congress and to really respond to the needs of reforming law enforcement in this country.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people are finally recognizing that is something important that needs to be done, because unfortunately we have way too many citizens dying, civil rights violations, as well as law enforcement being caught in not necessarily being wholly truthful. And so there does definitely need to be change, as there seems to be a lot of bad apples out there. But we definitely know that when there is change or even progress toward it, we can rely on you to cover it. So Camila, can you please tell the viewers where they can find more about you and also read about your work?
Yes, you can follow my reporting on Twitter at @CDeschalis. It's on Twitter and you can follow my reporting there.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're very honest that we're progressives. We call the Young Turks home of progressives, and we support progressive candidates.
There has been this reemergence of political activism, especially among young people.
This weekend was the second Women's March, both across the US and across the world. So these people are not simply marching, they're not simply talking, they're also running for office. And when they do run, they're gonna make a difference.
Joe Crowley is congressman from New York. He's very powerful. Why? He raised a lot of money. But there's someone finally challenging him.
We need to have representation that advocates as fiercely for working class people as possible from this seat.
If candidates like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez even get a little bit of media attention outside of what the Young Turks does, they have an excellent chance of winning. She's gonna win, she's gonna win.
68% reporting.
The majority of Americans want Medicare for all. So I don't care what you and your corporate cronies want. What I care about is what the American people want.
We believe in total change. Everything runs on donor money. And that is what we will fight, and that is exactly why they don't like us.
We're having fun, it's election night!
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has defeated Joe Crowley.
Here we go again!
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Down goes Crowley! Down goes Crowley! Down goes Manafort! Down goes Cohen! Women came out in record numbers in the primaries. They said, you'll be lucky to get one candidate. We now have 12 that have won their primaries. Bezos and Amazon announcing that they are going to go to a 15-hour minimum wage.
We're making progress. Let's keep going.
Many of these women made history.
The biggest victories, all women of color. Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, Sharice Davids and Deb Haaland.
And I want to go to Congress because I want to change those things.
I'm calling it. Jamal Bowman has won. Down goes Engel. Down goes Engel.
For a long time, we have not had progressives in power. It's going to be something to behold.
Welcome to Happy Hour, everybody. After a week of soul-crushing news, we break out the good stuff. Good news, good videos, good people, and of course, drink good alcohol. That's the worst thing I've ever had.
This is the best show.
Full disclosure, we did do a shot right before the show began. It says,
Let's
flamingo.
Flamingo.
The reason you had trouble with that word is it's not a word.
Okay.
This is the one of everything.
I've got a rash. Could I just put it on that to see if it'll take it off?
What did you used to think this was?
Bull piss.
Drink it, swallow it,
No.
spit it. Oh, that's needed after a day like this. Cheers to Brett Ehrlich. Climax. Uranus smells like farts. Because of course it does. This is the worst sketch ever of a perp. But guess what, ladies and gentlemen? They found the guy. This is Sophie's super happy dog story of the week.
This dog is so precious and deserves the world. I'm just not drinking that beer.
Here's my dog. This is Onyx.
Yeah, I would just say that he's exotic because he's not your traditional dog. Still 12 out of 10 because they're all good.
Well, if that made you happy, just wait till you see the best thing ever of the week. There is a woman who moves like a horse.
Why do I want to go home and like try this?
We're actually gonna show you the running butthole challenge right now. What's happening? No, that's just wrong. Every way. And we'll see you next time.
Hey, Dave. As you can probably see, Skype froze. Frozen crashed.
You know, I'm watching that documentary on the Vietnam War, and There was a TV journalist in the middle of some tiny little village in Vietnam doing live TV as the soldiers were burning the Vietnamese huts. And it didn't crash. And that was 1965, and he was in Vietnam.
And welcome back to TYT's The Conversation. I'm your host, Adrienne Lawrence. And now we're joined by the grant-making director of the Bush Foundation. That's an organization that invests in great ideas and the people who power them in Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, and the 23 Native nations. Welcome in, Jackie Statham-Allen.
Hi, it's so nice to be here. Thank you, Adrienne.
It's great to have you. So recently, the Bush Foundation announced that it's committing $100 million to seed 2 community trust funds that directly support wealth building for Black and Native communities in areas of the Midwest. That is a huge commitment. Now, what inspired the foundation to make this contribution?
Yeah, well, the foundation was inspired to make this commitment because we work to make our region better for everyone. And we feel that by addressing racial wealth gaps, that is one of the most important things that we can do for our region. And the reason why that is because the racial wealth gaps, especially for Black and Native American families, they're huge, it's profound. In 2019, the median Black household had just 13 cents of wealth for every dollar of the typical white household. And for Native Americans, that gap was 8 cents for every dollar. So as you can see, the gaps are huge. And they are a result of the lasting impact of centuries of race-based US policy.
Yeah, and it is something that is jarring for all of us, especially when you hear numbers like that and you think, what happened there? And I know a lot of people like to think, slavery, types of internment camps and all sorts of things went on, but they were so long ago, yet the racial wealth gap persists. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, that is such a great point. So racial wealth gaps and wealth is generational. And so when we take a look at US-based, race-based policy that happens long ago, that impact still matters. So for instance, when we think about slavery, so of course there were profound injustices around denied human rights and freedoms and torture and death, but it's also a quantifiable economic impact. When we take a look at those unpaid wages of enslaved people and what that meant for their descendants, that's $20 trillion today. And then if we think about Native Americans and US policy, like the General Allotment Act of 1887, that put into motion a 65% decrease in the land that was held by tribes. That's 90 million acres of wealth that was denied to that community. And those are things that happened long ago, but we can also look at the Homestead Act. We could look at the GI Bill, Social Security Act. Again and again, US policy disadvantaged Black and Native American communities and it advantaged white communities. And because wealth is generational, those impacts still matter today.
Yes, definitely. They definitely do matter. And it's interesting that you say that because I think recently it might have been the Manhattan Beach, California area that there's a region of land out there that was essentially taken away from the Black owners. And now it's being given back, which is significant. But there are so many instances of that kind of just robbery and pillage that has gone on. A lot of it state and government sanctioned. And as a result, we have this racial wealth gap. And I know a lot of people will hear about it, but they don't necessarily fully appreciate what it looks like nowadays in terms of the consequences. So can you think of any kind of direct impacts that racial wealth gap has for individuals?
Oh, absolutely. So wealth is generational and wealth is a predictor for future outcomes. When someone has access to wealth, then they are better able to take advantage of opportunities like education or buying a home or starting a small business. When someone has access to wealth, then they are better able to persevere through hardships or unexpected financial difficulties. And frankly, wealthier people are healthier people. And so wealth is one of the most critical determinants in life opportunities and outcomes in our country. And so by closing wealth gaps, it can make a difference in addressing virtually all other social and economic disparities in our country.
That intersection between race and class, then you know what? It's very, very close and much aligned. So that would be something to work toward fixing, which is great that the Bush Foundation is making this huge commitment. And I know it's dedicated to seeking steward organizations to receive that 100 million and to design and manage the grant programs. And why did you seek to go through steward organizations?
Yeah, so this is something that I'm really proud of about this initiative. I think it's one of the things that really makes it unique in that this is an exercise in power sharing. So the Bush Foundation, we established the lightest of frameworks. We know that we want to address racial wealth gaps through grants to individuals, and we have suggested 3 contributing factors that we think can really impact wealth, which include education, home ownership, and small businesses. And we are seeking steward organizations who are going to operate those grant programs for individuals because they are the ones who are closest to the communities. They're the ones that the communities know and trust. And because we really value the expertise and the connections that steward organizations will have with the community, and we feel that we will have better, stronger, more efficient grant programs to address this enormous challenge by going with organizations that are very close to the community.
And I know that you're co-leading this $100 million commitment at the Bush Foundation, which is a huge responsibility, as I would imagine. Yeah. Now, if you can share, what will you all be looking for when it comes to selecting the stewarding organizations?
Yeah, so I am co-leading this initiative with the Lakota woman, Eileen Briggs. And what we will be looking for are organizations that have very close ties with the community. They need to have credibility. They need to understand how work that is informed by the community results in better solutions. Also, we are looking for organizations that have experience in running grant programs and organizations that can manage a $50 million or $100 million trust fund, because that will be a large challenge in receiving those funds for the community trust funds and then making sure that they are operating sound, effective grant programs for individuals.
Wow, that's still, I keep thinking about that $100 million. That is a lot. And I know this is pretty unprecedented. Have you ever seen anything like this?
Yeah, so we were inspired by the work of Edgar Villanueva and his book, Decolonizing Wealth, in which he threw out the idea, what would happen if foundations took 10% of their endowments and placed that into programs that were specifically for Black and Native American individuals to benefit from. And when we decided to do this, we reached out to Edgar and said, hey, what have you learned when, foundations have done this work? And he informed us that really we are at the forefront of this work. So we are very proud to be a part of this, and we are glad that we are part of an entire ecosystem, a movement of organizations and individuals who want to build a more just society for Americans and who want to contribute to this very profound racial wealth gap issue.
Yes, that's huge because it definitely can't be done alone. And so having organizations like the Bush Foundation make this kind of investment and commitment, that is significant. So thank you very much. I appreciate that investment. And I cannot wait to follow what it does in terms of making change. And as I also understand it, the Bush Foundation isn't just investing 100 million, but there's also an additional 50 million in funding being invested. What's that money earmarked for?
Yeah, that's right. So there's an additional $50 million that we have committed over the next 5 years to organizations through our existing grant programs. And here we will be granting 2 organizations that are addressing systemic issues around the racial wealth gap. And so understanding that through our community trust funds, we will be able to empower and provide grants to individuals, but also understanding that there are systemic reasons why individuals need these supports in order to build wealth. So the additional 50 million will go to organizations that are working on systemic issues around wealth for Native American, Black communities, and all communities of color and other communities within our region.
And as much as things right now are kind of in turmoil, we have a lot of things going on there in the Midwest, particularly in Minnesota and in Chicago. And it seems that there is really an igniting of having these conversations again about policing, about injustice, about racial division there. And I know that that's kind of where the Bush Foundation really operates there in the Midwest in uplifting the individuals there and those voices. How would you say the Bush Foundation looks to approach these things when we have to confront them as we are doing right now?
Yeah, well, we see these things as all being related. So when we think about our initiative, which is specifically to address racial wealth gaps, we see that those wealth disparities are related to race-based US policy. And so just as there are direct through lines from broken treaties to unemployment rate and through lines from slavery to incarceration, there are also through lines from US policy to the way in which Black and brown people interact with the police. And so we see that wealth may be a less visible way of racial injustice, but it is a very important mechanism for us to build a more just US society.
Absolutely. And the Bush Foundation will be hosting an informational webinar for potential stewarding organizations tomorrow, Tuesday, April 20th at 2 p.m. Central Time. And you can find out more at the Bush Foundation website. And where is that located, Jackie?
The www.bushfoundation.org.
Thanks.
works. Jake Guggenheim conspiracy in the studio. What the hell's going on? We're in the studio, everybody. We're back. Should I be screaming when we're back in the same room?
You're doing it.
But it's happening. Things are happening.
Yep.
There's nothing that anybody can do about it. The game is afoot. It's great to be back in the studio for the second time. I just feel like it's been decades since I've been here. You know what I feel like in here? Bit of a newsman.
Oh my God.
Just a bit of a newsman. I mean, look, we're in a studio. We've been in this studio many years, but yet when we come back to it, bit of a newsman feel. Okay, so tonight at 6 o'clock Eastern, we're live with Etiquette Sperry and a lot of the news. In fact, most of the news, and everything's gonna be great. Some of the news is disastrous, of course, so it's good that we start on an upbeat note, as things can be a roller coaster around here. We're at the same desk, Casper.
We are. Would a newsman waste time on a news show by not talking about the news?
No, probably not. That'd be called vamping, and there's no need to vamp. There's no need to vamp. We're already doing. We got to do the news. All right, so
I'm extra salty today, so brace for impact, as you like to say.
Okay.
Okay, brace for impact.
Okay, last time that happened, I lost $400. I am not in a salty mood, so you never know what's going to happen. Anyways, guys, seriously, I'm fully vaccinated. We're back in the studio. We're about 1 million miles from each other, but that's okay. That's great. Okay, probably preferable, to be honest. But you know what we're gonna do now? The news.
We're gonna do the news. Let's start off with something that's gotten quite a few progressives in a tizzy, and of course, it has to do with a photo that went viral. A photo featuring Senator Kyrsten Sinema has gone viral. Not only does it point to her quirky sense of humor and her unique sense of style, but she's wearing in that photo a ring that has a very specific message on it. As Melanie Zanona writes on Twitter, Kyrsten Sinema, the Senate's most colorful member, posts a pic of herself on Instagram rocking an F-off ring and sipping what looks like sangria. Oh, how cute. Now, look, we don't know for sure whether or not the ring is meant to signal any type of message to any specific group of people, but progressives saw this as Sinema essentially sending a message to any opponents who criticized her for voting down a $15 an hour minimum wage. I'm sure many of you guys can remember that moment. Let's take a look at what that was like.
Miss Sinema. No.
Right, so Cenk already has a comment on this. Go
ahead. I do. So listen, we're gonna do a poll on it, tyt.com/polls, on whether she meant it or not. Do I think that it's necessarily something about $15 minimum wage? No, I don't think it's that specific. That's my guess, right? But is it meant as a political message? That's the question we're gonna ask you guys, but my jury's in on it. Yeah. She's a United States senator, and so she's not going to have an F-off ring on accidentally. She didn't match those glasses and that hat accidentally. She didn't put that on Instagram accidentally. No, that's a message. Now, I'd like to note for the record, as Anna's about to explain to you in detail, that pretty sure she didn't wear that ring when she went to go see her corporate donors. She wouldn't say that to them. But would she say it to you since you're the voters? Oh, hell yeah, she just did.
Now, before I get to the details about her corporate donors, what I want you guys to take away from this story is how little she cares. She really doesn't care. She doesn't care about the backlash she received after she voted against a $15 an hour minimum wage on the Senate floor. She doesn't care about what the potential ramifications or consequences could be, because to be quite honest with you, she's not expecting consequences. And given how lawmakers have behaved, not just in like the last election cycle, not just in the last 5 years, but for a while now, it's clear that there won't be consequences, because when you got to choose between corporate donors or doing right by your base or right by your voters or right by your constituents, the majority of whom want a $15 an hour minimum wage in the state of Arizona, she's gonna go with their corporate donors. Okay, so let me give you these details. This was reported by David Sirota's outlet known as the Daily Poster. They also post over at Jacobin, and they write that Senators Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin will headline the national conference of the restaurant lobbying group, the National Restaurant Association, that led the battle to block the wage increase and that is fighting a separate Democratic measure to make it easier for workers to form unions, meaning the PRO Act. Now, there's been a lot of attention on Senator Joe Manchin and how he did pay lip service to constituents who do want to pass the PRO Act, but it's good. It's good that the DSA is organizing and phone banking is applying enough pressure to get someone like Manchin to at least say that he'll co-sponsor the PRO Act. But I also want to be clear that whatever members of the Senate say right now, you still have that legislative filibuster in place. So I have this feeling, and I think it's with good reason, that Manchin just wants the DSA and progressives off his back, and he's like, whatever, it's not gonna pass in the Senate anyway, sure, I'll co-sponsor it. Unless he's willing to get rid of that filibuster, or in the very least, reform the filibuster. It doesn't matter what he says he's gonna co-sponsor. That doesn't mean we don't continue applying pressure, but understand that a lot of the pressure needs to be focused on getting rid of the filibuster or reforming it to actually pave the way to get, laws or bills like the PRO Act passed.
Yeah, so first of all, the other part of the theatrics of Kyrsten Sinema is that she wants to do what we've talked a lot about on the show, which is change on the outside, continuity on the inside. Right, and so she does these theatrics, the theatrical way that she voted down minimum wage, the theater of that particular picture on Instagram. And by the way, let's note for the record the irony or perhaps the appropriateness of a senator named Sinema obsessed with theatrics. So now, when they go to meet with the Restaurant Association, and then they immediately get checks from people from the Restaurant Association. And the Restaurant Association is not only against the PRO Act, I think the PRO Act is a little bit more complicated, but clearly billion% against $15 minimum wage. And then coincidentally, Manchin and Sinema will vote against the minimum wage and make a big show of voting against it, Manchin proudly brags about killing things like that. Sinema did the hip swirl as she voted against it. Then she sends a message to you guys saying, F off, you guys aren't important to me at all. She would never dare wear that ring when she goes to meet with the Restaurant Association, okay? And that boy, she's like, oh, please, please. Now, there's not a single reporter in the country, apparently, among the national media. David Sirota covers this, he does a great job. Washington Post, New York Times, do you guys exist? Do you think that maybe the corporate donations they get from the Restaurant Association and the Chamber of Commerce and the Business Roundtable, et cetera, might be relevant to their vote on the minimum wage, might be relevant to their vote on the PRO Act? Yet you never put that in any of the articles. The national media is embarrassing, embarrassing. Okay, so and the reason why Kyrsten Sinema can tell her own voters to F off is because she knows you said no consequences. Why no consequences, Anna? Because the media sucks.
So the media would report it. I mean, it's not like this is a secret. Yeah, they're corrupt. They're all corrupt. And then what? Like that's my point. And then what? And then what? And then what?
No, but Anna, okay.
And then what?
No, I would love to get the and then what, and I will tell you then what. So right now, the media reports Manchin and Sinema as moderates and centrists, which makes them look reasonable. Oh, they're between the Republicans and the Democrats, which makes them look reasonable. If they kept talking about, oh, they voted against minimum wage, and here are their corporate donors that agreed with that policy, and here's the checks that they sent to Manchin and Sinema, right? Well, that would get through to people. We are in news. We have it up to here with political information, okay? So we all know how corrupt Manchin and Sinema are. Do you think people in their state know? No, especially among Democratic voters. Republican voters know about corruption and they've gone to crazy conspiracy theories to fight it, but at least they're aware of it. When you go talk to Democratic voters, they're like, no, I read the New York Times and I listen to NPR. All of our Democratic senators are angels sent from above. And the ones that are the most right wing are the most moderate and centrist and reasonable. That's what the New York Times and Washington Post tell me, so it must be true.
I think one of the mistakes you make though is assuming that Democratic voters, and I'm not talking about potential Democratic voters or working people who actually don't vote at all because they don't think that lawmakers are gonna do anything for them. Most Democratic voters at this point represent the managerial class. These are people who are college educated. These are people who are well-to-do. These are people who are not concerned about a $15 an hour minimum wage to the extent that we are. And that's also a problem. Yes,
so that's
that is
a big
problem.
chunk of the Democratic voters, I agree, but that is not, I'd be shocked if that was the majority. But look, guys, what does the Democratic Party stand for? If it turns out we stand for the management class, well, then we're gonna flip, we're gonna lose all of our advantages, and we're gonna win no elections going forward. So look, Anna, but the bottom line is the rest of the electorate does not know what we know and what our viewers know, because we cover it every day, right? But the rest of the media, in their absolute protection of the corporate Democrats in the Senate and the House, aids and abets their corruption. So like last example here, Ted Cruz, when he went to Cancun, everybody covered it wall to wall. Oh, look at the hypocrisy, etc. If they gave that same coverage to Manchin's donors or Sinema's donors, their approval ratings would plummet like Cruz's did. And then all of a sudden, then they'd be like, oh, no, like Cruz did. All of a sudden, tough guy Cruz, right? Apologetic, I didn't mean to go to Cancun, I was doing it for the kids, but I didn't mean it, etc., right? And then all of a sudden, Manchin and Sinema are dancing into a different tune. But it's like the cops. There's no consequences, there's no accountability. So they get to do whatever they want because the media will not report on their corruption at all costs. If people knew how corrupt they were, their poll numbers would be disastrous. And then they'd turn around and have rings of, oh, I love you, I'm sorry, I meant $18 minimum wage. So I guarantee it, that's definitely how politics is. Anyway, one last thing. Look, guys, I'm gonna gratuitously say, I don't love the PRO Act here. There's parts of the PRO Act I don't agree with. But whether I agree with it or not, when somebody like Mark Warner, and to add to the list of people who are against the PRO Act, says that he doesn't agree with certain provisions, even me agreeing with some of what he's saying policy-wise goes, I don't believe you. Why? After Warner goes and does some of the things that he does in favor of corporate America, like Amazon sends them huge checks, right? And after all the Amazon executives send him checks, I no longer believe a word he says. I don't know that it's based on principle or that they bribed him. And yes, Mark Warner, I don't care about your feelings. When you take tens of thousands of dollars from Amazon executives right after a vote, even if you're not the most corrupt man in America, you look like the most corrupt man in America. So either change the system or don't cry about us calling you corrupt, because these look like obvious bribes.
All right, well, let's move on to our next story, and it has to do with how Senate Democrats are kind of navigating this corporate tax hike in order to pay for Biden's infrastructure bill. So looks like Senate Democrats have already settled on only increasing the corporate tax rate from 21% to 25%. The Biden administration has proposed increasing the corporate tax rate to 28%, even though it was 35% before Trump cut taxes on corporations and the wealthy. Now, we're learning through reporting by Axios that Democrats who've privately hinted they may be uncomfortable with going to 28%. And that includes Senators Tim Kaine, Mark Warner of Virginia, Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona, and Jon Tester of Montana. So we're talking about conservative Democrats here who have been bought off by the very corporations who have a vested interest in keeping their corporate tax rate low. Increasing the rate from 21% to 25%, which is what they're proposing here, would raise about $600 billion over 15 years. It would leave President Joe Biden well short of paying for his proposed $2.25 trillion 8-year infrastructure package. And before I go to you, Cenk, I think it's important to take a look at how Senator Chris Coons, a conservative Democrat, is messaging on this bill, because it's not just about keeping the corporate tax rate low. We now see a growing number of corporate Democrats calling for essentially cutting more of the popular provisions in Biden's infrastructure plan. Take a look at what he had to say.
The question I have for you, Senator Coons, is what's in it for Republicans to agree to a plan in which Democrats can act bipartisan to pass part of the bill, but then they ram the rest of it through on a party line reconciliation vote?
Well, Chris, the broader question you're really asking is what's in it for our country and what's in it for the people we represent from our states if Republicans and Democrats work together to solve problems. I think that if we come together in a bipartisan way to pass that $800 billion hard infrastructure bill that you were talking about, that I've been urging, then we show our people that we can solve their problems. We've all agreed for a long time that we need to invest more in American infrastructure. We just disagree about how to pay for it.
So Coons is essentially repeating what you hear from a lot of Republicans on Fox News. Oh, you know, this bill, it just has too much in it. We need to focus on infrastructure. And Coons seems to be in agreement with them. And obviously this is in an effort to keep the costs down in order to prevent any tax hikes on the wealthy and on corporations. That's what this is really about.
Okay, guys, this is an epic disaster. And how progressives react to this will be, well, it'll be everything. So let me explain. So you know, Trump cut the corporate taxes from 35% to 21%. So Biden said we're gonna move it back up to 28%. That's not back up. That's halfway to 35%. So already Biden was, I think, literally terrible on the issue, okay? 28% is not back up to 35%. So it's basically Biden saying, yeah, I wanna give a giant tax cut to the wealthiest corporations in America by not undoing Trump's tax. Now, he then has signaled a willingness to concede on even the 28%, and now Axios openly, all the senators in Washington openly talking about 25%. So it's gone, 10% from 35 to 25. That is gigantic. Gigantic. That is the Democrats doing what they always do. You take the Republicans' gifts to the rich and to the corporations, and then you shave a little off the top and then make them permanent. That's the same thing Obama and Biden did with the tax cuts for the rich that Bush passed, but couldn't make permanent. So no, this is total good cop, bad cop. I want no part of it. Second of all, the infrastructure bill, Coons. Now, Coons is really important. One, he's one of the most conservative Democrats, right? But two, he's from Delaware, and one of Biden's top allies, he was almost gonna go in the administration. One of his top advisors in his campaign was one of the top surrogates, okay? Why do I tell you that? Because Coons is Biden.
Yes, exactly.
So Biden is sending Coons out to say, go ahead and tell everybody we're gonna cut the living crap out of my infrastructure bill.
Yep.
So because he never meant it, he never meant it. So this is the proof in the pudding. If the progressives in Congress still can't muster up how to oppose them, for they're hopeless. All right, so now let me give you more details. Coons says, well, maybe we do, instead of 2.2 trillion, which is Biden's proposal, maybe we do 800 billion. Oh, that's it, this bill's gone, this bill's gone. Then Collins comes in, Susan Collins, a Republican, but part of the group of 20 so-called bipartisan Republicans and Democrats. You know what that is? That's a corporate group. That corporate 20 will control every piece of legislation, and Biden will secretly cheerlead for it, okay? So they're saying, and you know why they're saying 800 million, and specifically Coons is saying it? So that when Biden settles on around 1.1 trillion, they'll say, what do you mean? We got the Republicans up from 800 million. But it wasn't the Republicans, it was Coons, who's Biden's guy. So Biden is undercutting himself so he can brag about getting only half of his number. Now, back to Susan Collins. I brought her up because she says, well, we should only keep the parts that are about infrastructure. In other words, anything relating to Green New Deal, we're gonna kill. Now, if they kill the parts that are about the Green New Deal, they cut it to half, they make tax cuts for corporations permanent at a deep, deep level, and they don't include $15 minimum wage, which is the track that we're on right now. That's the track we're on right now. If they do all that, that is a miserable bill. And then, of course, all of Washington media and all of the Washington Democrats and all their fanboys and girls would come in and go, oh, Jake, that's the best we could do. There was nothing else we could do. There was nothing we could do. It was the best we could do. That's why we screwed everybody. Now you need to cheerlead for the Democrats. And my answer to that, and all of your answers to that should be hell no, okay? So let's see what you got, Biden. But I guarantee you right now, we are voices in the wilderness. All of us progressives. I mean, Bernie barely fights for us at this point. So you think we're gonna win on this stuff? No, we're gonna get slaughtered on this stuff. And then, but the progressives better not sit back and go, oh, I don't know. Is there anything we can do politically? Because then you're no different than Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden. And and then we're in a lot of trouble.
I mean, what happened to no excuses? They have the slim majority in Congress. I get it. There's a legislative filibuster in the Senate, but we're not talking about unpopular provisions in this infrastructure bill. We're not only talking about the environmental components of it, but remember, there's also a component that provides income for individuals who have to essentially stay home from work in order to provide elder care. Like, there are parts of this provision that are popular all around, and if Democrats are willing to fold this easily on the infrastructure bill, I mean, what happened to making the child tax credits permanent? Right, that's not even included in the infrastructure bill. That's supposedly going to happen in a subsequent proposal from the Biden administration.
Sure.
And like, really, they're going to use all their political capital on getting this infrastructure bill passed. And if they're this weak on the infrastructure bill, I think it would be incredibly naive to think that they're going to fight in order to keep those child tax credits permanent.
No, look, I'm done trying to get progressive legislators to listen to reason. So we have to somehow burst their bubble. And the bubble is Washington, D.C. Everyone in there is telling them, oh, don't fight, next bill, next bill, next bill. No, Anna's 100% right. There is no next bill.
There is no next bill.
There's HR 1, there's the infrastructure bill. There ain't nothing else. You think they're gonna go back to a $15 minimum wage and fight for that? They're not gonna do that. Honestly, if you're a progressive in Congress and you believe that, they're playing you for a fool. Ask them, give them your concrete example and date of when they're gonna release a bill that has $15 minimum wage in it and fight for it. And how are they gonna fight for it? They won't give you that answer. Nobody will give you that answer because that answer doesn't exist. They're gonna completely drop it. They're gonna go back to the daycare thing and make it permanent? No, hey, you know what? Any so-called progressive in Congress, I'm just directing this to them. Name a number. I'll bet you any amount of money. You think Biden and Pelosi and Schumer are gonna help you pass $15 minimum wage and then they're gonna go make that daycare thing permanent instead of 1 year? Name a number, name any number. You don't even know you're getting played, let alone the fact that you're gonna somehow rally, fight back when you've shown no fight at all, and derail what is about to screw us permanently in the corporate tax rate, let alone the fact that they're not even talking about minimum wage. You guys, all right, good luck to you, because you guys are all geniuses and you have it all figured out, okay? So good luck.
We gotta take a break, but when we come back, the Biden administration is shutting down one of their child migrant detention centers, and we'll show you why.
Back during the break, English teacher 1984 in our member section says, I'm uncomfortable with the corporate tax rate at 25%. It should be 38% with no loopholes. Here, brother. Irene says it's good cop, bad cop, but the good cop's not even doing a great acting job. Totally, except everybody in Washington is like, ooh, Joe Biden really wants to fight. Oh, he's like FDR and LBJ. At this point, that's just a sad joke. You'll see. If I'd love to be wrong, you know when I'm wrong, I come out and tell you. I ain't gonna be wrong. He ain't no FDR, he's gonna fold on everything. He's not gonna fold, he doesn't even want any of this stuff. Effectos writes, since student loan debt cancellation, gone. $15 minimum wage, gone. Raising the corporate tax rate, gone. How's Biden start his campaign? Quote, nothing will fundamentally change. Well, that's what he promised, and that's where we are. So he wasn't lying on that front at least. New YouTube member that hit the join button below, Pamela Twining. Pamela, you're kind of awesome. Bit of an American hero, is that too much? Nah, just enough. All right, Pamela, American hero. All right, hit the join button, join her. Michael Goldman on YouTube Super Chat. Always happy to give to TYT. Please do more coverage of progressive candidates like Odessa Kelly and Rana Abdulhamid. Even if our allies in Congress have fallen short, we must give them strength because they're all we've got. I hear you, and Odessa Kelly is a wonderful candidate. She's a great Justice Democrat. She was released, that news was released recently. We're having her on our programming. Having said all that, outside of Nina Turner, it's hard to get excited until we see just one thing that the Just Democrats do in Congress to fight back. I'm the guy who founded and named Justice Democrats. And so if I wanted to just have it be about my ego, I tell you, they're doing an amazing job. Oh, amazing. You see that $20 minimum wage they got? No, my job is to be honest with you. So let's go, let's see some action. Otherwise, it doesn't matter what I think. I can have Odessa Kelly on the show 1,000,000 times. You guys aren't gonna give her $5 because you think, what's the point? But the people that are already in there, they think, well, I'm already in here. So, okay, that's very nice. Really teamwork there. Jacob Torres writes in, yay, I love to see the OG duo Cenk and Anna in the studio. The last news and salt are all appreciated. Thanks for all you do, TYT. Jacob, we appreciate you, brother. Serena Butterfly Dragon, beautiful. Says, did you see the signs put up in Arizona? They play the video of her curtsy and point out all of her no votes on things voters want. I retweeted them, so great. I, of course, have not seen that, but that sounds awesome. Peter Hamby says, Manchin and Sinema are giving the GOP fuel to regain the Senate. It makes me wonder how much right-wing media is covering their acts. I bet a lot. Yes, I agree as well. Grandma Dragon says, it's so good to see you back in the studio. Much love. Grandma Dragon right back at you, sister. Much love. Trisha Briggs, Cenk and Anna back in the studio. Best Monday ever. Thank you. And best Mondays being with you guys. We'll be right back. Cenk and Anna with you guys back in the studio. Feels great. I gotta be honest with you, it actually feels slightly weird. Like I got so used to the home studio, I'm like, is this okay? Am I allowed to do this? So it just, but I'm warming back up, as you can tell. I'm such a random collection of like good feelings, optimist, positive guy. Gets so mad about the stories. Anyways, all right, let's get mad again, come on.
All right, well, Biden, of course, has been getting a lot of backlash over the conditions in the migrant detention centers, so he's shutting one of them down. The Biden administration is shutting down one of the migrant detention centers that houses, or I should say detains, migrant girls. So these are minors and the conditions are so awful that they had no choice but to shut it down. Now, how awful are the conditions at this facility in Houston? Well, ABC News reports that sources familiar with the facility's operation said the girls housed there, ages 13 to 17, were at times instructed to use plastic bags for toilets because there were not enough staff members to accompany them to restrooms, which I think is all fine and dandy in this country where we have massive corporations that literally force their employees to urinate in bottles because they're not allowed to take bathroom breaks. So we're just training them for the workforce here in the United States. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that, guys? Obviously, I'm being sarcastic, but we also learned that there's a lack of outdoor space and that meant that girls spent most of the day on makeshift cots surrounded by boxes intended to offer some semblance of privacy. The facility also suffered from overcrowding and failed to comply with pandemic-related distancing measures. There were about 500 girls in that detention center. They're now being moved out into other detention centers. And this ABC News video has some more details on what those centers look like.
They were more treated like merchandise rather than treated as human beings.
This migrant rights advocate toured the warehouse 2 weeks ago and was troubled by what he saw.
The girls were not allowed to get up unless it was to shower or to use the restroom. Even their meals were delivered to their cots.
The administration contracted the National Association of Christian Churches to run the site. They specialize in disaster relief, not caring for migrant kids. And this morning, there are serious questions about how this group was awarded a $4 million government contract in the first place. A lawyer for the church group tells ABC News the administration, including Health and Human Services Secretary Javier Becerra, personally requested their services and that they did what they could do to help under the direction of HHS. As for the girls, many now relocated to other shelters like this one in Carrizo Springs, Texas. Others reunited with their family.
Now, this is a growing issue at the border where unaccompanied minors are essentially being forced to remain in these detention facilities when in reality, many of them arrive with information about family members or sponsors within the country that they can go to. But that would require resources. It would require more manpower in order to go through the necessary checks before placing these children with these sponsors or with these family members. And we have a broken government that refuses to do it. So instead, we play musical chairs and put these children in one awful detention facility to the next. That's what's happening at the border. That's it. That's what's happening.
Yeah. So there's one part of this story that you should know the full context for. So that Christian church organization, their denials about them asking for this contract was pretty convincing to me. It sounded like they really meant it when they were, and because they gave specific details that were credible about how the Biden administration asked them to do it. They even said, "Look, we didn't have any experience in this. This just landed on our footstep. We didn't want it, right?" And so. It sounded credible to me. So it seems like it's more of a screw up of the Biden administration than that particular organization. So just wanted everybody to have that full context. Now, in terms of what they should do, look, I don't want people thinking this is an easy issue. I always remember Trump coming out and saying, healthcare, no one knew it was this complicated. And look, when unaccompanied minors show up in America, it is complicated. There are a couple of different factors. You got to follow the law, and you don't want them coming by themselves. On the other hand, when they do, you can't just send them back, etc. Right? Now, and there's still relatively young administration, right? It hasn't even been 100 days yet. So I understand all of that, but to me, it seems like I always want to be constructive. And one thing that makes sense to me is get them to the sponsors as quickly as possible. And we've got to have a better sponsor system. So the right wing says, oh, well, if you give them to family members or sponsors, you never see them again. First of all, that's not true. We've shown you the stats. I think it's about 83% come back for their court proceedings. But we could have a system that's has more checks and balances on the sponsors, so that we can get that 83% up to 95%, or just a number we're all more comfortable with. Like there should be some degree of consequences if the kids don't come back for hearings that they're supposed to have, etc. Right? That's the right way to do it. Trying to hold them in government facilities for any period of time is almost never going to work. It's going to create situations where you're worried that the girls are going to move around, in which case it's harder to track them. And what if there's sexual assault? Oh my God, that's a nightmare. But if you don't have them move around, then you have them cooped up in a box, right? There's a lot of no wins there. Let's get them the sponsors as quickly as we can.
Well, I also think it's a problem when you're communicating that unaccompanied minors will be allowed into the country and go through the proceedings, but families arriving to the border will be turned back. So if you're a parent in one of these Latin American countries who's incredibly desperate to get your children to safety as a result of, by the way, US foreign policy that has completely destroyed and ravaged those countries, well then you're gonna take that risk. You're gonna send your child to safety unaccompanied. Wouldn't it be better to actually have a policy in place? Like the half measures with the Biden administration, and we saw this with the Obama administration as well, do not work. Stop trying to straddle the desires of the GOP and then what progressives want. You gotta commit to one or the other. And so what he's trying to do here is say, no, I'm a hardliner when it comes to families arriving at the border. Okay, well then people are gonna send unaccompanied minors because they're desperate. No parent does that because they're bad people. No parent does that because they enjoy doing that. They do it because they're desperate. But we wouldn't have an unaccompanied minor problem if we had a clear policy on what to do with asylum-seeking families, because really that's what's at the heart of this. He did not reverse what Trump did in banning asylum seekers during the pandemic. He's just continuing on with that policy.
Yeah, I just want to add two good points that Anna made there. Number one, so Republicans look at that and go, okay, then turn them all back. That the solution is turn back the kids too. Let them go back through the desert and through that perilous journey with coyotes. At that point, coyotes can't get paid, so they wouldn't even have any guidance. Good luck walking back to Guatemala, okay? That's the Republican solution. Our solution is no, accept the families as well. That doesn't mean they get to stay. That's why I talk about having a great sponsor program that if folks are released into the country and they don't come back for their hearings, there should be some significant consequences. But in return, we can treat people humanely when they arrive here. So there is a better way to do this, but Biden is trying to split the baby, and almost literally at this point. And you're not gonna win any Republican votes. How many times can we say this? It's not the 1990s. There are no Republicans to win over, they're gone. So middle ground approach, all it does is cost you more of your base voters. If I was gonna say if the only thing you care about is politics, but of course the only thing they care about is politics. And because if you cared about it in terms of policy, obviously you would accept the families, not permanently, but so that they can get a hearing. And last thing that Anna mentioned, look, I got kids. A lot of you out there have kids. How desperate would you have to be to send your kids on a journey of hundreds and hundreds of miles, and sometimes with coyotes who are like really bad guys? How desperate would you have to be? You think anybody does that out of, who cares? Indifference? No, they love their kids just like we do. And you gotta be incredibly desperate to do that. That's how bad the situation is. That's what we gotta wake up to.
You know what's interesting, because I was curious, what was different about Cuban amnesty, right? Because Cubans, after the Cuban Revolution, were granted amnesty in the United States. And everything just goes back to foreign policy, guys. It's kind of incredible. They were hoping that the US government was hoping that they could use Cubans to fight Fidel Castro in Cuba. Like go to war and reverse the revolution. That's what it was about. But the government doesn't see a use for migrant families seeking asylum. So that's really the cold hard truth of what's happening at the border. And it's really frustrating to see the Biden administration get so concerned about what Republicans have to say about him, what the corporate media has to say about him. He's not winning any favors, either from the left or the right, on this issue by trying to straddle that line. And he's failing pretty tremendously on this issue.
Yeah, and he's giving in a Republican talking points like calling it a crisis, etc. There's just no strength there. There's nonstop triangulation, and it's not going to work. All it's going to do is get him in trouble. It's not good policy. It's not good politics, and I don't know that Biden's got it in him to turn around. So expect more of this trying to muddle through with half measures, especially that refugee cap that we covered last week. Adopting Trump's brutal refugee cap, what, to get 0 Republican voters? Nah, it's in Biden's DNA to go wherever the Republicans are, to meet them halfway, no matter how draconian the Republicans are. And it's not smart politics. It puts all of us in grave danger, because that makes it more likely that a very right-wing, and I'm worried fascist Republican will win the next time around, because all we're doing is appeasement.
Definitely. We should take a break, but when we come back, if you're concerned about scams and fraud in regard to these coronavirus vaccination documents and cards, you'd be right in being worried, because we're already seeing it happening. I want to give you the details on that and more when we come back.
green things going on. We got a green sale. You're gearing up for 420. I don't know what's happening on 420. There's a lot of codes in here. Apparently, you're going to take 20% off the Go Green collection at shoptyt.com through Friday. Wow. Shoptyt.com. There's a lot of different ways to go green around this time of year. Okay, yeah, you guys get it. There's the whole marijuana buds right there. Okay, Earth Day is going to be covered on Thursday right here on TYT. John Iadarola is going to lead the proceedings. Anna's going to be here. Ben Dixon, Ida Rodriguez, Wally Mazzano, the Sunrise Movement, Brett Ehrlich. That's all at, oh my God, we got members only coverage coming in at 10:30. It starts at 8:30 p.m. for everybody, but at 10:30 we switch to members only. So make sure you catch all of it. All right, now speaking of members, I'm going to our members section. Hermpes wrote in, the media portraying Biden as FDR or as swayable by the left reminds me of when the media was saying Trump was going to change his tune and start acting more presidential. Nothing will fundamentally change indeed. So here we go. Tina says, today basically sums up why I didn't like or want Biden. Biden's a serial liar, always was and always will be. But as much as I love and I do, just not as much, and wanted Bernie to win, given his silence and complicity with Biden, I'm not sure he would have fought if he had become president, #disappointed. Look, Tina, unfortunately, I agree with you. Well, this thing I'm starting to think now is if Bernie had won, would he have been able to effectively fight back against all these guys? I don't know. Anyway, ironically, next I go to handle someone who likes Bernie Sanders. All right, so they're going to close down this facility, but where are the kids going? If they're being moved to other facilities, aren't those already also overwhelmed?
Yes, they are.
Yes.
Yeah, so they're doing nothing essentially. Like this changes nothing. It changes nothing. It's not even a Band-Aid.
I'll tell you why they're moving him. They're moving him because of the peeing in the bags. I'll tell you, that's an optic that they can't stomach unless Amazon's paying them a lot of money, in which case they stomach it right away. All right, anyway, let's go to Jay Hufford wrote in, Cuban immigrants were worthy victims. They were wronged by our official enemy. Migrants now are victims and therefore unworthy. And so look, I wanted to make one point about what Anna said. Partly it was like, oh, Cuba, it's because they're suffering so much under communism. What, they're not suffering in Latin America now? The only people that are suffering are people under communism? That makes no sense at all. So it's just politics and ideology and horse crap. That's the reality. We'll be back. Back on TYT, Jen Canano with you guys. People who just joined on YouTube by hitting the click button below: Brendan Ray, Serena Butterfly Dragon, there she is again. Ashley D, Ashley, Serena, all of you folks. Brandon, great to have you with us. It's wonderful to have you guys as Young Turks members. You are going to make change possible. That's what we're fighting for, and that's what we're going to get, even if we gotta shake some of our own to do it. All right. I appreciate your courage, and I hear that there's some sort of hype train. I hear that it's loaded. I hear it might be able to soon be leaving the station if it hasn't already. That's what's happening on Twitch, and you all know it. Let's just keep it real. All right, Casper, what's next?
All right. Fraudulent vaccination cards are popping up all over the internet, mostly because whether you got a vaccine or not is not basically kept, like no one keeps track of it digitally. What you get is some sort of paper document indicating that you've been vaccinated. Well, if you are a fraudster and you're looking to make some money, you can just sell copies of that document, blank copies, for people to fill out for themselves, and that's literally happening right now. So one account on eBay with the username Asian Jackson was shut down after investigators found that particular account was selling blank vaccine cards. Asian Jackson, the eBay account maintained by a man who works at a Chicago area location of a national pharmacy chain, sold at least 110 blank vaccination cards through eBay, including 50 cards alone on April 11th. Now I want to be clear about something. That pharmacy worker says that he is not the person who's, someone basically hacked into his eBay account and is using it to sell these fraudulent documents.
Of course.
I don't know how true that is. That's what he's claiming. That's why his name hasn't really been revealed here. But this is a real problem, as some schools, workplaces, even public venues restrict access to people who have not gotten their coronavirus vaccine yet.
Yeah, he's like, oh, to my account, I've been meaning to tell the eBay a couple of weeks ago, it's hacked and a different email, and I happen to work at a pharmacy.
I know, seriously.
I happen to have access to these things, but obviously they're hacking. And so I don't know. Let them investigate and find out what happened. But look, the real problem is not the fact that these are paper. I get that that's a problem. And
that's a huge problem. That's the heart of the problem.
No, look, so number one, let's be fair. They had to get those vaccines out. So they didn't want to go to the paper version. They wanted to do the digital version. Apparently they ran into issues there and they had to go. I totally get that. I likely would have made the same decision. Okay, of course I don't know all the details of the problems that they ran into because they're not sharing them. By the way, if we'd gone digital, then the right wing would have had, and some portions of the left wing would have had other problems with the digital. Like, oh, they're tracking me, it's Bill Gates, it's Fauci, Tom Hanks, whatever, right?
Don't they already digitally track the kind of vaccinations you've gotten, like outside of coronavirus? Pretty sure they do.
So probably, but it doesn't matter. It's all about optics and politics, right? So would I have minded digital tracking? Of course I don't mind, right? It just says, you know what they're tracking? They're tracking that you got vaccinated. Okay, great.
They're tracking everything you do. Let's just keep it real. You have a tracking device in your pocket all day, every day.
Yeah, if you don't know already, this is now almost everybody knows this. But like my wife and I are having a conversation in the car about someplace we might go on vacation. I go home and on my desktop, an ad for that place pops up.
No, it's just a coincidence.
Yeah, you worried about Tom Hanks and Fauci and Bill Gates tracking you? Dude, you're already tracked in 1,000 different ways. Anyways, so. And normally in a country, people faking getting a vaccination would be a tiny problem. Like in Taiwan, how often is this gonna happen? 0.01%. No one's gonna care because it's not a big deal. That's not the heart of the problem. The heart of the problem is that about 30% of this country doesn't want vaccinations. If we had a normal rate of people who don't want to get vaccinated, just a couple of points, it wouldn't matter. We'd have herd immunity anyway. Who cares what they're doing with their paper, vaccination cards? But the problem is a lot of people are going, no, I don't believe in science. And the Republican Party's like, yes, we hate science too. That's right. Let's come up with a conspiracy theory. And 30% of the country instantly believes it.
I know, but what do you do about that, Cenk? Like, what do you do about it? You can't change that. You can't force people to get vaccines.
Yeah.
The only thing you can do as
is avoid them.
As an employer, as a person who owns a specific venue, the only thing you can do is take control of that space and ask for documentation indicating that you've been vaccinated or people have been vaccinated, so you can actually protect other patrons, other people, other workers, other students, right? That's the only thing you can do. You can't force people to get the vaccine.
Yeah.
The only thing that will persuade them to get the vaccine is if there are limits to what they can and can't do as a result of refusing to get the vaccine. So in order to do that, you need to track it effectively, and they haven't been tracking it effectively. Using paper documents, of course, is gonna lead to a bunch of fraud.
Yeah, of course it is. I agree with that part. I actually want to give a shout out to one of our viewers who made a really interesting point. Deb Wicks using YouTube Super Chat. We love doing the show with you guys. And Deb, thanks for writing in. Wrote in, found out today that only 5 of my 19 employees have gotten the vaccine or even intend to. How are we ever going to achieve any level of herd immunity? I am seriously depressed about this ever ending. Okay, so Deb backs up what Anna's saying perfectly. Now Deb has to go into work with 14 out of 19 people not vaccinated and potentially not giving a damn. Now, the good news is, guys, from science, and you can't look, everybody should be cautious. Everybody's got a different risk, metric for which amount of risk they'll be able to withstand. Let's put it that way, even though it's very clunky. Anyway, but once you're vaccinated, the viral load that you receive, even if you get sick. So I got J&J. I got about 2/3 chance that I'm not gonna get sick. But let's say that I get the virus in that 1/3. It's possible, right? But even then, the viral load that you have is much reduced. That's why there's almost no hospitalizations and no deaths. Then it becomes a normal virus, like a cold, right? So I'm not saying don't worry about it, etc. I'm saying go get vaccinated, because you don't want. I always remember that nobody wants to be the last man to die for a mistake, right? We usually say that about the wars, Vietnam, World War I, etc. Right? But in the case of not getting the vaccine, that's what happened. There's no need to die now. Go get the vaccine. And if it turns out you have it and others don't, yes, you have a slightly elevated risk because of that, right? But it's actually only slightly elevated. It is a low viral load even if you get it. And so I also don't want you to panic. We got to go on with our lives because these guys live with us and there's nothing we can do about them. So you go protect yourself, and if they want to do reckless, weird things, it is a free country, and so we can't make them do it. That it just sucks that we lost a whole wing of America to a faction that just doesn't believe in science, doesn't care, and would rather believe their own mythologies and conspiracy theories than anything closely related to facts.
Well, let me try to give you guys a little bit of a silver lining to this story, because there are some statistics indicating that a pretty good chunk of Americans have at least gotten their first dose. So at least 129.5 million Americans have gotten at least one or both doses of a coronavirus vaccine and have received a free proof of vaccination card with the logo of the CDC as officials push to inoculate the nation. Now, again, that documentation is a little sketchy because of the fact that it's very easily, people can basically photocopy a version of it and fill it out themselves. But nonetheless, this is good news that the majority of Americans appear to be interested in getting the vaccine. Half of Americans have already gotten at least one shot. I do worry about people who aren't able to get the vaccine because of underlying health issues. Those are the people we need to worry about when it comes to these anti-vaxxers. But overall, based on what you said, Cenk, you're right. The research that I've read about this indicates that if you do get the vaccine, the odds of you getting incredibly sick and hospitalized is greatly reduced. Nearly non-existent. But obviously, read that research for yourself. Don't take my advice or Cenk's advice. We're not medical professionals here.
That's definitely true. One last fun thing. Texas and Tennessee accidentally made the fraud cases much worse. Accidentally, I don't know. They put out blank versions of it on their website.
Why? Why did they do that? But why?
So people just started printing them out.
But why would they do that?
And saying that I got vaccinated. So at a minimum, it's a knucklehead move to do that because it's inviting fraud. I don't know what it is at a maximum. Are there Republican officials in Tennessee and Texas that might have done that out of bad faith? Because guys, go get out, let's endanger everybody else. They're just faking. I don't know. Would I put it past them? No. But either way, you have to worry about crazy right wingers we all live with less if you go get vaccinated. So do it as quickly as you can.
All right, let's move on to one of the most disturbing stories we've covered in a long time, because it has to do with cops committing elder abuse out in the open. So, police in Loveland, Colorado used excessive force and were incredibly brutal toward a 73-year-old woman named Karen Gardner, someone who has dementia and who apparently forgot to pay a whopping $13.88 worth of merchandise at Walmart. So she has dementia, she walks out of Walmart forgetting to pay for it, and that's when the cops are involved. The videos that we're about to show you are incredibly disturbing, so I want to give you that warning, but this is how cops in Loveland, Colorado responded to this elderly 73-year-old woman.
Police, stop. You want to stop with lights on, siren? Stop. You just left Walmart. Do you need to be arrested right now? No. Okay. Let's stop. Come on.
I'm going home.
No, on the ground. Stay on the ground.
I'm going home.
On the ground. On the ground. On the ground. We're Bravo 242. After a short struggle, she is now detained. Come on. I am code 4.
Do that.
Why did you do that? I told you to stop. You don't get to act this way. Come on, stay on the ground. All right, let's stand up. Why are you doing this, ma'am? All right, stand up.
I'm not doing anything.
Right now you're resisting, which is not gonna fly with me. And before that, you tried to steal from Walmart.
Wow, what a tough guy. Really doing a great job there, roughing up a 73-year-old woman with dementia. The police department is now facing a federal lawsuit. I'll give you the details on that, but Cenk, why don't you jump in?
So we got a couple more videos on this, and I want to talk about police procedure. I think that's the most important thing here. But I wanted to comment on that video because you saw the beginning there. Don't lose track of the beginning. I mean, my God, he didn't try to get in front of her and talk to her and say, hey, where are you going? What happened? Talk to me, etc. He went to the arrest instantly. He went to throwing down a 73-year-old woman who weighs 80 pounds. Like what, you saw it there, right? 1 second, 2 seconds? How long did it take for him to immediately go to put handcuffs on her? Hold on, you guys saw her. Did she look well? I don't know, I thought she didn't look well, right? I mean, but I only got to see her for a second before she's on the ground. Like I would have, when she said she looked kind of dazed, I would have wanted to talk to her for, I don't know, 5 whole seconds, 10, 15 seconds, a minute before I ascertained, is she confused? She's 73, you could tell. Is she confused or is she a thief that I should throw on the ground? But as I'll talk about more later, we don't train our cops that way. Everything, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like nails. So they see a frail old woman who might have dementia and they see a nail.
Look, let's just keep it real. This is what policing mostly focuses on. Like, yes, there's a racial component to it, there's no question. But at the end of the day, cops are not really there to protect and serve. Cops are there to protect business interests. We saw it with Occupy, we saw it in this story because, oh my God, this woman forgot to pay Walmart for $13.88 worth of merchandise. Wow, wow. Oh, I think Walmart's gonna be okay, right? But you're right, Cenk. It's just this sense of, how dare you not listen to my commands? I'm gonna rough you up now. And it's totally justified because whatever a cop says goes. Doesn't matter if it's a 73-year-old woman with dementia. Doesn't matter if she looks dazed and confused. I know people with dementia. I mean, just watching this video, there are moments where they're childlike and defenseless, you know, and you watch the way he's roughing her up and proudly doing so. In this lengthy body cam footage, by the way, on multiple occasions, the cop says to other cops, oh, you know, she's probably around 80 pounds. Oh, she's frail. He knows, but he's still roughing her up anyway. And by the way, the video goes on. Let's watch.
I'm not going anywhere.
Why are you fighting with me? And why are you trying to slip the cuffs off?
I'm going home.
Stop.
I'm going home.
No, you're not. Are you finished? Are you finished? We don't play this game. You understand me? And if you try to kick me, oh, this is gonna be bad.
I'm going home.
Stop.
I'm going home. I'm going home. I'm going home. Ow.
Are you finished?
I'm going home.
Hey, stand up. We're not gonna hold you.
Let's just go to the ground. On the ground. On the ground. Why are you doing this? Let's see who she is.
I'm going home. I'm going home.
Yeah, I know. I'm just trying to search her real quick.
Oh, I didn't know.
No, Wrestle for a minute.
So there's now a federal lawsuit against the Loveland, Colorado Police Department because in the video that you just watched, it is alleged that the cops dislocated her shoulder, which is pretty easy to believe because you can see how they're roughing her up. Gardner allegedly again left Walmart without paying $13.88 worth of merchandise. Employees stopped her, took back the items, and then refused to let her pay when she offered her credit card. She was unable to communicate with them or understand what was happening. Gardner, by the way, according to the lawsuit, lives with dementia. This is characterized by the impairment of at least 2 brain functions, the lawsuit states. On top of that, she has sensory aphasia, which they describe as an inability to understand spoken, written, or tactile speech symbols that result from damage to the area of the brain concerned with language. Austin Hopp is the name of the cop who was roughing her up there. And we do have one more video, Cenk, because the situation was so brutal and violent that a bystander had to come up and confront the cops about how they were roughing up an elderly person who, by the way, the bystander thought was literally a child because of how tiny she is. But Cenk, go ahead.
Yeah, before we get to that video. So look, you notice in almost all these videos, cop videos, that they blame the victim. So they keep saying, why are you making me do this to you? By the way, a line that a lot of people who've been abused will be familiar with, unfortunately.
Yep.
Always abusers tell their victims, why are you making me do this to you? And so I feel like the citizenry is the people who are being abused. The cops are the ones that are in power situation, and they keep saying, you're resisting. We don't play this game. Now, that line right there is the epitome of what they are taught. So some of you might look at that and go, that particular cop is terrible. I can't believe he did this to this poor woman. And I don't know how I feel about that. I do know
no, he's terrible. He should be fired immediately.
No, look, I think that's an interesting question because 100%. There's no way in the world that they didn't teach him to do that.
They might have.
They taught him to do that.
But I also know that the police force, local police departments are infiltrated with all sorts of scum, including that guy.
So look, I don't know about any of that. I don't know any of his personal proclivities or his politics. But guys, but most important, the reason I'm telling you that is not to defend that particular cop. It's to tell you, you're not gonna solve the problem by firing that cop. They train every cop that way. So if anyone dares to resist even 1%, you break them. It doesn't matter if they're 73 years old. The only thing that matters is, my God, they can't be rich. If they're rich, then we're in a lot of trouble. So don't do it to rich people. But outside of that, okay, if anybody disrespects you a tiny bit, they don't follow your orders, and don't give them any time. Don't give them 5 seconds. You either shoot them dead in 2 seconds like they did to Tamir Rice in Cleveland, 12-year-old boy in a park, right? Or like this woman, you tackle her in 2 minutes and show her who's boss. You tell me, I don't care. You're any cop, even if you're the best cop in the world. They didn't teach you that in training? Yeah, they taught you that. Don't ever let them disrespect your orders, break them. You know it. Every cop in the country thinks that. They take sometimes good people, oftentimes I hope good people, and they train them to be monsters. You think, okay, here's how I can prove it. Is every cop in the country going, I can't believe this bad apple. I can't believe how outrageous he treated that woman. Guaranteed every cop, nearly every cop in the country looks at that video and goes, that's what they taught us to do.
I think every cop looks at that video, and anyone who might have a problem with it will refuse to speak out, because if you do speak out, you'll be retaliated against. We've seen story after story of cops being retaliated against. Do they explicitly train them to do that? I don't know. But what I do know, by the way, what I know based on what an Oath Keeper just told 60 Minutes over the weekend, cops are like training Oath Keepers and other right-wing militias. Okay, there's scum within the police departments. I think it's too simplistic to say it's the training. There's a culture of violence. There's a culture of protecting business interests over the lives of people, even when it comes down to $13.88. And by the way, that guy thinking he's a tough guy, that guy thinking he's good at his job, thinking he's some sort of hero for wrestling and brutalizing an elderly person, which by the way, it's amazing to me that he's out of breath while he's doing it. Man.
So look,
like maybe training people to be like physically healthy if they're going to be police officers. But anyway, I want to go to one more video, Cenk, before we go to your last comment. So let's take a look at what a bystander had to say when he witnessed the cops roughing up this elderly woman.
Where's your sergeant? Huh? Who's my sergeant?
Yeah.
Okay, well, first, I can tell you that. Sergeant Metzler, he's at the police department. You can go talk to him if you have an issue.
Yeah, give me your car so I can put a report.
Okay.
I see you there, how you throw that little kid.
Little kid?
Well, I don't know
He's not
if
a little kid. And this
he
is what happened.
He was just walking, and I see you how
She
you
just
grab him.
stole from Walmart and refused to stop, refused to listen to lawful orders, and to fight me. This is what happens when you fight the police. I have to use force to safely detain her. That's what this is. This isn't just some random act of aggression.
So the reason why he thought that it was a little kid is because she's tiny and frail. The lawsuit describes Garner as just 5 feet tall, weighing just 80 pounds. Hop himself, that's the cop, later on estimates that she's between 4'10" and 5 feet tall and weighs maybe 100 pounds. He then told the other cop, Jalali, that Garner was like 20 pounds. Elsewhere, he also says that she was a frail little thing. So why did you need to rough her up like that?
Yeah, so 2 things on how he roughed her up. One, he probably thinks he didn't, and that's because he was trained. And so you say it's not just the training, it's the culture, but that's my point. Where did they get the culture? They got the culture from the training. And so, but to your point, Anna, about how they protect business interests, and that's the main point of the cops, well, I totally agree with that. So the Oath Keepers go in and they have cops that are apparently training them across the country. And is there a big drive to find those cops and get them out of the police departments? No. On the other hand, if there was a news story about how a couple of cops in the country were training left-wing protesters on how to oppose oil pipelines, they'd be found like this. They'd be taken out of every police department. There'd be a national investigation. And why? Because you got to protect property rights more than you have to protect human rights. And that's also part of the training and the culture of policing. So, by the way, that bystander, incredibly brave.
I know.
Right?
Yeah.
You're gonna go up as a brown man with an accent to a cop and tell him what he's doing wrong. Man, you got guts, brother. So we appreciate you. Okay. Now, think about defund the police. This is the second point. One of the things they were trying to say is, let's take some of the money from the police departments and use it towards social services because we're sending in hammers to deal with things that aren't nails. And so apparently either he sucks at his job or the training was awful, but likely both, on the issue of spotting someone with dementia. No one told you that if it's a senior citizen, that they might have an Alzheimer's issue or a dementia issue or some cognitive issue. That never occurred to you? Man, why are you making me do this? She said 1,000 times in the longer video, I'm just trying to go home. I'm just trying to go home. And she's, I'm going home. She didn't try, I'm going home, I'm going home. When does it occur to you that she might have a cognitive issue? It occurred to me in the first second, and you say, okay, that's hindsight. But guys, after you're watching 20 minutes of her saying, I'm going home in a way that clearly indicates she doesn't understand what's happening, it's apparent that none of the cops got trained on any of this. Instead of saying, hey, here's somebody that needs a social worker, they were taught, here's someone who needs an ass kicking. Think about how insane that is. We've got to stop teaching them that.
All right, we got to take a break. We'll come back for hour 2 with more police brutality and that Oath Keeper story that I teased earlier in the show. Come right back.
Came in late to watch TYT Old School, and I hear Cenk Uygur talking about napkins. Is this the kind of nonsense Anna Kasparian was talking about? Gotta love membership privileges. Gotta love it.
Please have Dave on every 4 episodes or so.
Watching Ben Mankiewicz and Cenk Uygur on Old School talking is exactly like watching Seinfeld and George. I'm not sure if that's a compliment.
Who's on Old School today? Is there one? At Dave Kohler. I hope it's not Brett Ehrlich.
This episode of Old School has killed me. Who knew a conversation about good and bad underwear could be so hilarious and relatable?
Couple things about this video. Dave Kohler looks so badass.
There's more than a 73% chance this Old School will be really funny. Cenk Uygur has been up since 4 a.m., so he's tired. Hence, everything will seem funnier to him. P.S. Remember, food talk, new words, and no or very little politics.
Dave Kohler enjoyed performance on Old School. Can we please hear about your time as a geologist? One geologist to another?
I appreciate that all these people enjoy it because I know Cenk loves to do it, and he does it because he knows the fans love it too.
This looks like a conspiracy. This looks like a scheme to defraud.
The Bush administration put folks into the regulatory agencies who believed in destroying regulations.
Memories of the Great Depression are faded.
I stood on the floor of the Senate day after day attacking what they were trying to do.
They just generated all this junk, took home huge bonuses, and then when it collapsed, they said, oh, not us.
What they ginned up was pure extortion, putting a gun to the head of Congress.
Time and again, they heard the devastation that was happening in low and moderate income communities caused by bankers, by lenders, and they chose to ignore it.
I understood that the SEC was not merely a weakened version of what it was supposed to be. It was an agent of Wall Street.
When no one's enforcing the law, the criminals take over.
I'll continue to sit. I'm going to continue to stand with the people that are being oppressed.
The president labeled him a son of a bitch.
I don't think it's good to be a distraction to your team.
To stand proudly for the national anthem.
You know, some of these people need to move to another country.
Well, you shouldn't be playing. You shouldn't be there. Maybe you shouldn't be in the country.
The president is put in place to amplify the racists in this country. Black men and boys are killed at an exponentially higher rate than white men and boys, as outlined by PBS. Black people are most likely to be killed by police, found mappingpoliceviolence.org. Personally, my biggest gripe is not saying how sports and politics have been attached at the hip. From the jockey syndrome, to the Negro Leagues, to Tommy Smith and John Carlos, Muhammad Ali, to modern day and everything in between. This is not an escape. It is a reflection of reality and a reflection of the times.
Dog on the White House lawn, would that
I'm Mike Shekels, and I'm the Director of Technical Operations, so if you're frantically tweeting at us that something's broken, thank you, because I'm fixing it. This here is Johnny Greenwald.
I'm Manager of Post-Production Technology. Simplest terms is I deliver the content.
And this is our master control room. We have many, many more destinations than ever before, and we created this room to consolidate it, to make sure that everything's going out is up to standard, so we meet all of our contractual agreements.
Turks, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Lydia Ansley and Robin Merrick just joined by hitting the join button below on YouTube. We appreciate it. If you sign up at the Essentials level or upgrade through the same button, you'll get our post game. Post game's very light and fun today. That's for all the members. Okay, just two quick comments here. Max's mama wrote in, if Walmart took back the items that weren't paid for, what was the reason for them to report it to the police and the subsequent police arrest of the woman? And goes on to talk about the brutality. Well, it's because corporations run everything in America.
Exactly.
And you can't, and they're merciless. And Maui Greg says, can we please stop saying that the bullies and white supremacists have infiltrated law enforcement? That's like saying that water has infiltrated the ocean.
Okay, what's the right language? What's the right wording that you'd like to use?
They're just saying.
So everyone in the police department is white supremacists. They've been white supremacists from the very beginning.
No. It's not a criticism. They're just saying there's too many of them.
No, I know.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll be more precise with my language.
No, it's not about you. They're criticizing cops. Speaking of which, that leads to the breaking news.
All right, so the attorneys in the Derek Chauvin trial have closed their arguments, meaning today was the last day of the trial, and now it's up to the jury to decide whether or not to convict Derek Chauvin for murder. Now, Eric Nelson, who's the defense attorney, had an interesting request, and we should show you what he had to say. Let's take a look.
I just don't know how this jury, it can really be said to be that they are free from the taint of this. And now that we have US representatives threatening acts of violence in relation to this specific case, it's mind-boggling to me, Judge.
Well, I'll give you that Congresswoman Waters may have given you something on appeal that may result in this whole trial being overturned. But
So what Nelson is referring to there is statements that were made publicly by Senator Maxine Waters, which we'll get to. I'm sorry, Congresswoman Maxine Waters, which we'll show you in just a minute. But I think it's also important to show you first how the judge responded to it. Is this going to end in a mistrial? Let's take a look.
I wish elected officials would stop talking about this case, especially in a manner that is disrespectful to the rule of law and to the judicial branch and our function. I think if they want to give their opinions, they should do so in a respectful and in a manner that is consistent with their oath to the Constitution, to respect a co-equal branch of government. Their failure to do so, I think, is abhorrent, but I don't think it has prejudiced us with additional material that would prejudice this jury. They have been told not to watch the news. I trust they are following those instructions and that there is not in any way a prejudice to the defendant. Beyond the articles that we're talking specifically about the facts of this case, a congresswoman's opinion really doesn't matter a whole lot. Anyway, so motion for mistrial is denied.
So Eric Nelson is arguing there should be a mistrial because Congresswoman Maxine Waters essentially had some public statements about this, indicating that the jury must find Derek Chauvin guilty. We're gonna show you that video in just a second. But the judge clearly is saying, listen, this can't be a mistrial because the jury has been instructed to ignore the media, avoid the media when it comes to this particular trial. And here's what Maxine Waters had to say publicly, which of course has upset not just Eric Nelson there, but also right-wingers across the country. Take a look.
But what needs to happen that's different this year than all the years before?
We're looking for a guilty verdict. We're looking for a guilty verdict. If nothing does not happen, then we know that we've got to not only stay in the street, but we've got to fight for justice. But I am very hopeful, and I hope that we're going to get a verdict that will say guilty, guilty, guilty. And if we don't, we cannot go away.
What happens? What should protesters do?
Well, we got to stay on the street, and we've got to get more active. We've got to get more confrontational. We've got to make sure that they know that we mean business.
So obviously, I think it's right for the judge to deny a mistrial as a result of what Congresswoman Maxine Waters had to say. At the same time, I do think it would have probably been best if she kept her comments to herself until after the jury deliberated and reached its verdict.
No, I don't even agree to that. So there's only one thing she said that I think is wrong, but barely. So first of all, she said, we're looking for a guilty verdict here. Yeah, the guy knelt on the other guy's neck for 9 minutes. I'm looking for a guilty verdict, okay? That doesn't mean Congresswoman Waters or I get to decide what's in the trial. And it doesn't mean anything about the jury. We're not in the jury, they're in the jury. What am I looking for? Well, I'm a rational human being who has eyes. I'm looking for a guilty verdict because the guy is definitely guilty from what we can see from outside the courtroom, okay? She said we should fight for justice. Is that a problem? I know, well, for Republicans it is. They hate the idea of fighting for justice. They love injustice. But is that a problem for anybody else, a rational human being? No. She said, we gotta stay on the streets. Yeah, that's called protesting. It's protected by the First Amendment. Nothing wrong with that. The only thing she said that is arguable is she said, we gotta be more confrontational. Okay, this is why I thought Trump should not face legal charges for his speech on January 6th. I thought he should face political charges, but he was along similar lines, more confrontational, okay? So, but what does it mean for the jury? Oh, Maxine Waters said something, so I now am brainwashed into believing it? Or I'm intimidated by it, or no, it doesn't mean a goddamn thing. And so this whole, look, I went to law school, I got admitted to the bar, I barely practiced, and I was a prosecutor only as summer interns. But from my experience, and I just explained to you how limited it is, but this whole idea of the jury gets tainted, it drives me nuts. You either trust the jury or you don't trust the jury. A judge never gets tainted. A judge can hear everything and they're a rational human being who knows the law and is smart. We think juries are dum-dums. So we go, oh, don't tell him anything. Don't tell him anything. Oh my God, what if they know a congressperson wants Chauvin to be guilty and another congresswoman wants him to be innocent, Marjorie Taylor Greene, okay, or declared innocent or not guilty. So what? The judge can ignore it, so can the jury. Why, is the jury some sort of below average person? Then don't trust juries. Make up your mind, do you trust juries or don't you? That tainting is total nonsense to me. It's never made any sense. Okay, the good news, if you're asking for a mistrial, that means you're losing. That is Chauvin's defense attorney saying, we lost this case. You gotta bail us out. Because there's no one who thinks they're winning that asks for a mistrial. That's a fact.
So I don't disagree with what Maxine Waters had to say in that video. But I do think that yes, you don't ask for a mistrial unless you know you're losing. As you watch that trial unfold and you watch the insanely compelling testimony coming from medical experts, coming from people that the prosecution brought forward, yes, it appears that they're losing. So why needlessly chime in as a public official, as a public figure, when there's obviously a possibility that your statements as a congressperson could be used against, and that's exactly what they're doing. That's exactly what they're doing. So, just don't comment on it, especially if you're a lawmaker, until we know what the verdict is.
I don't agree at all, and I'll tell you why.
Why? Okay, what good did that do?
Because
what did that lead to?
Because Democrats are always told to shut up, right? And Republicans say 1,000 things about Trayvon Martin, not worrying about tainting the jury pool for George Zimmerman, okay? They say 1,000 things over and over and over and over again. The minute a Democrat says something, you better shut up. Yeah, no, I think he's goddamn guilty. And I'm glad Maxine Waters said guilty, guilty, guilty. I wish every congressperson would say it. This idea that somehow the jury's gonna be brainwashed by them, then why isn't every jury brainwashed by the Republicans? Oh, they told them, oh, you gotta go convict the guys, they're all criminals and thugs. You know how they are. Okay, let everybody out of jail because the Republicans said they were all criminals and thugs. Are we gonna do that? No, we're not gonna do that. So now the one time a congresswoman is actually outraged at police abuse, we're gonna let the abuser go? We're gonna let the murderer go? Hell no. And so I think our legal system, when it gets to like this, the ironic thing here is, guys, I'm arguing for the conservative position. The conservative position is, no, we're not gonna let people off on loopholes and technicalities. And you know that's the conservative position.
I know, but okay. But the loopholes and technicalities exist, so that's my point. Like, why needlessly give the defense ammo when this is the system? I'm not saying I agree with the system, it is the system.
No, and I'm gonna say one last thing. I'm gonna say one last thing. Look, guys, it's all in the media attention. If a Republican went to the same place and gave an incredibly inflammatory speech in the opposite direction, the prosecution would never even consider asking for a mistrial because Fox News wouldn't have talked about it. MSNBC wouldn't have made a big deal out of it. None of it would have said a goddamn thing. The only reason why we're having this conversation is because of Fox News. Fox News, oh, Maxine Waters, Maxine Waters, Maxine Waters. And all of a sudden, defense lawyers like, maybe I could say Maxine Waters and ask for a mistrial. And the judge is obviously Republican and he's like, oh, this is outrageous what Maxine Waters has said. Look, I don't know the guy's politics, and to be fair, but you heard what he said. And he obviously hates Maxine Waters and upbraided her. But it's all driven by the media and their coverage. If she had said the same exact thing and Fox News and the right wing had not covered it, it would have been completely non-controversial.
All right. No, I can't help it. I gotta say it. Look, she said something very specific. We're looking for a guilty verdict. She's not a talk show host, she's a lawmaker. She shouldn't have said that. I get it, I agree with her. But as a lawmaker, those
she
words
has no
will
influence. She has no influence on a judge in Minnesota. She's a congresswoman from LA. She has nothing to do with the government of Minnesota. She's a US federal legislator. If she was, I don't know, Attorney General of Minnesota, if she was the governor of Minnesota and she said, I'm looking for a guilty verdict, maybe that affects the jury, right? But a congresswoman from LA has nothing to do with the system in Minnesota.
My point is, in a system where technicalities are often used in order to lead to a mistrial, or, I mean, the judge just recommended bringing that up on appeal. So it will be used against what we're hoping will happen. So why do it? Why do it? That's what I'm saying. I'm saying just be careful in your language.
Because she's representing people who are angry and who demand justice.
I get that.
So no matter what we say as progressives, and Maxine Waters is barely a progressive, but on these issues, she's great, okay? No matter what anybody says on our side, constantly, oh, no, you shouldn't have said it, you shouldn't have done it, it's your fault, you were too confrontational, you should have just bowed your head, you shouldn't have said anything. I'm sick of it. We should fight back against it. Anyway, look, they're gonna do what they're gonna do. I hope it's not a mistrial, that's good news. And if on appeals they want to use it as an excuse, honestly, they would have used anything as an excuse to let that murderer off if they let him off on appeal.
All right, we'll see what happens. We got to take a break. We'll be right back.
Back on TYT. Look, a lot of comments here about cops and, by the way, cop unions that are not positive. Detroit Micro Sound on YouTube Super Chat says, even if you cry out for your mama, they don't care. They intentionally hire low empathy people. So, again, I don't know if that's true. I do know they trained them to not have empathy. Do not care what they say. Do not ever listen to what they say. Unless they disrespected you 1%, in which case, crush the living soul out of them as they did to George Floyd. Little Mac writes in, not all cops are bad. The bad cops just outnumber them. Military equals no union. Police equals why union? 100% disband and reform all police organizations with new leaders and different standards. Retraining doesn't work on bad cops. Okay, so there's a lot in there, but this anti-police union sentiment, unfortunately, is growing. I say unfortunately not because I'm in favor of the police unions. You've heard me, not a fan, right? But it's now bleeding into how other unions are perceived. So Anna's Margarita Salt in our member section says, if there was one entity that gives unions a bad reputation, it is the police union. And by the way, it's the only union in the country that has any power. Why? Because they beat up people to protect property rights. So that union is allowed to be powerful. Every other union is crushed. So, gee, I wonder what the relevance here is. All right, I'm gonna read this, one of our members. I don't know if they're in favor of Anna or me. Cousin Minnie writes in, relevant, Cenk and Anna. This is from a quote from Keith Boykin, so let's see what it says. If a statement for Maxine Waters can be used as a justification to overturn a guilty verdict for Derek Chauvin on appeal, then courts are gonna have to go back and revisit every single case where Donald Trump made a comment about pending trials for 4 years when he was in office. Look, that's partly what I was getting at. And Trump said a million things, but every Republican says a million things about every goddamn trial. And because our side never makes a big deal out of it, it's never considered. Fox News makes a big deal, Ted Cruz makes a big deal out of Maxine Waters, says, okay, that's it, we all have to stop every trial. All right, anyway, new YouTube members, Kimberly Ocampo and Christian RL, they hit the join button below. Bit of American heroes, Kimberly and Christian, thank you guys. And we do this show together, and so in fact, let me go to more comments. Let me go to Twitter here. I'm sorry, Twitch. So lots of wonderful folks here. Tandy be gifted 5 subs. Pluie has been, I don't know, is that how you pronounce it? Been with us 10 months using Amazon Prime. If you have Amazon Prime, it's free for you, no matter where you are for us, a member for us or not a member for us on any other platform. You can sign up and we still get the revenue if you have Amazon Prime on Twitch. And they said another month of worth of Bezos bucks for the best news team in America. We appreciate it. C Missile was been with us for 11 months on Twitch. Tier 3, that's great. Back in the studio, love you all. Biggest Justin, 9 months. You also using Amazon Prime. TYT gets all the Bezos bucks for 9 months. TYT keeping it real. Love when Cenk and Anna are on the show. Hashtag Salt Dragon. Hashtag Justice Dragon. Love it. Minnesota Party Or wrote in. You guys in TDR are the highlight of my week, and I'm thankful there's at least one news network based on reality. Keep doing what you guys do. Thank you. Thank you. As I've said a billion times, it's true. We can't do the show without you guys. Let's Play has been with us for 11 months. It says 11 months worth of Bezos unnoticeable money. No shame. That's funny. We got a lot more where that came from. We'll be right back. All right, back on TYT. I'm just gonna read one comment here because I thought it's really interesting. Shay Smart on YouTube Super Chat said there should be term limits for police officers. Both my brothers are officers and I've seen their attitudes towards people change over the years. See, that goes to exactly what I'm saying. Your brothers went in good people. The culture around policing is no empathy, no empathy, no empathy, kick their ass. And now you're worried about them. You gotta get them out before before that settles in. So we're doing it wrong. We're doing it wrong and it's super obvious. One just quick note from Twitch. Depressed Progressive gave 1,200 bits. You make us happy every day, so thank you. We really appreciate it. All right, Anna.
A Louisville police officer is facing an investigation after arresting a protester, not only in a violent way, but repeatedly punching the protester in the face as the arrest was happening. Let's take a look.
Let your hands go now. Okay, but if I want to get out of the car, I'm going to do that. I don't even. Hey, stop hitting the bitch! Stop resisting! Stop resisting now! Stop hitting him! Put your hands behind your back! Stop hitting him! Put your hands behind your back! Put your hands behind your back! Hit him! I'm going to hit him! Stop your hands! I got it on camera. Stop! Stop! Hit him! You hit him. Swear to God. Oh. I'm not moving. So if they touch me, I don't give a. I got it on camera. Punching me, goddamn baseball. He broke his glasses.
So to give you more context into this arrest, the citation said that the protester there, Denorver Garrett, was arrested for standing in the middle of West Jefferson Street at 6th Street holding a large cross, quote, causing a disturbance to the public and causing a safety issue to motorists. He was charged with disorderly conduct and resisting arrest. And according to the citation, an officer delivered 2 to 3 closed hand strikes, but the video shows the officer punching Garrett at least 4 times. Garrett was released on and is scheduled to be arraigned on Wednesday, and that's according to public records. But if you don't like the way the protester was treated in Louisville, you should keep in mind that red states like Florida are passing laws, and this did just pass in Florida, that essentially allow motorists and cops to run protesters over if they're blocking the road. I'm not kidding. I'll give you the details on that in just a minute, Cenk.
Yeah, you guys notice he was carrying a wooden cross, a large wooden cross. You know what that means? That means he's Christian. I don't know if you got that. So this is what they do to Christians in America. Now, as you saw, he's black. So obviously that makes it a little different, doesn't it? So I don't know if they would have done that to a white Christian that was right wing. Oh, then they'd be in a lot of trouble, right? But as I look at that, I think before the cameras, how many times did cops like that punch guys like that in the head? 1 million, 10 million, 1 billion, 10 billion, right? They know they got cameras everywhere. They got body cams. Everybody on the streets recording with their iPhones, and they're still punching people in the head gratuitously 4 or 5 times. You know why? Because obviously they think there's nothing wrong with it, because they've probably been doing it for decades. Not only were they never discouraged from doing it, they were probably encouraged to do it. So now the police chief in Louisville says this is against regulations. Yeah, whatever, I don't believe you. I think you either formally or informally tell the cops to rough everybody up. And so that's what happens. Oh, you're a Christian? By the way, you know who got roughed up by the authorities? Jesus Christ. And maybe he had a skin shade that's a little lighter than that guy, but only a little lighter. If Jesus was back carrying a large wooden cross across the street, you know what they'd do? They'd kick the living crap out of him.
I mean, but is he going to be blocking the road though?
Yeah.
Because if he's blocking the road, then of course it's okay. At least that's according to a new law that just got signed by Governor Ron DeSantis in Florida that I want to give you the details about because it is relevant to this story in Louisville and what is likely to happen in red states like Kentucky. So the law in Florida specifically, which goes into effect immediately, grants civil legal immunity to people who drive through protesters blocking a road, which Democrats argued might have protected the white nationalist who ran over and killed counter-protester Heather Heyer during the Charlottesville tumult in 2017. It also makes blocking a highway a felony offense. So if you don't like protesters protesting, just crush them or run them over, you'll be granted immunity. More from that law that just passed in Florida. The law also creates a broad category for misdemeanor arrests during protests, and anyone charged under that provision will be denied bail until their first court appearance. DeSantis said he wanted that to prevent people from rejoining ongoing protests. They just say it. And one other thing I want to know. Anytime you hear right-wingers like DeSantis or police chiefs who are supporting what DeSantis just signed, you'll hear their arguments about, oh, these poor small businesses. I mean, during the protests, these small businesses get looted and poor small businesses. Quick question, why don't the cops actually protect the small businesses that everyone's pretending to care so much about? They don't care about the small businesses. They just want to crush the protesters because they don't like the message coming from the protesters. They want to provide immunity for the cops, whether they're beating people up while they're patrolling, shooting people who are unarmed while they're patrolling, or running protesters over while they're patrolling. Like that's all this is about.
Yeah, so all of those Republican talking points, remember their convention, they would not stop talking about the First Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom of speech.
They don't care about speech, come on.
Not only is it freedom of speech to protest, but asking the government for a redress of your grievances is in the First Amendment. So if you believe in the First Amendment, you would cherish protesters. Instead, they're like, oh, who cares, murder them. But we're for the First Amendment, we're Republicans. No, you're not. You don't give a damn about the First Amendment. And guys, this law's got selective prosecution written all over it. So what does that mean? That means don't you dare touch a hair on a right-wing protester's body. If a right-wing protesters are in the streets and you run them over, you'll be charged on murder and you'll be convicted, guaranteed, okay? If there's left-wing protesters in the streets or Black Lives Matter protesters in the street, run them over at will. And they'll let you get away with it. That's exactly what that law means. And if you don't realize that's what they means, you're a sucker. There's no way they're gonna let you run over right-wing white protesters in America. It's never going to happen, okay? But you run over black people, Muslim people, or just left-wingers protesting an oil pipeline or anything else, then hey, it's Murder Incorporated, brought to you by Ron DeSantis.
Yeah, I mean, look, it really depends on what they're protesting. So if you're a white protester who's at a Black Lives Matter protest, yeah, they'll run you over.
Yeah.
In Florida, it's totally fine. If you're a right-wing gang member or militia member who decides that you want to storm the Capitol on January 6th and crush people who disagree with you, that's totally fine. That's okay. That's when cops will treat you with kid gloves.
Yeah, the cops let the right-wing protesters breaking into the Capitol.
Rioters
who were chanting, hang Mike Pence, who were looking to murder the vice president. They let those rioters beat the living crap out of the cops. You all saw it with your own eyes. But if you're a left-wing protester, now Florida's saying murder them in the streets, just run them over with your car. By the way, you graze a cop with a car, they'll charge you with homicide. That's a weapon that could kill. That's it. That's a deadly weapon. You graze a cop with a deadly weapon, that's it, homicide, right? Oh, you actually ran over a left-wing protester and murdered him, you're free to go. So that's the insane, and by the way, again, I always blame the media. Why? Does everybody in Florida know that the Republicans just said you could murder left-wingers in the streets with your car? If you think they're protesting?
I'm sure they do.
I doubt it. I doubt anybody in Florida actually knows that. Other than right-wingers who are like,
Cenk, we gotta protect the businesses from the rioters, Cenk.
Oh, yeah.
They know. They know. Are you kidding me? They know. They love this. They love this. Are you talking? I mean, look at the Panhandle, which elected Matt Gaetz, and we're having a conversation about whether or not they're gonna elect him out of Congress. Come on, Cenk.
No, look.
This is let's just be real about who we are and what this country is. They know and they love it.
Okay, so look, Anna, there's a simple way that the media can act in this case. So Ron DeSantis and all the Florida Republicans say, okay, you can murder people in the streets, right? Then every reporter should ask every time, I thought you guys said you were in favor of the First Amendment. Are you or are you not in favor of the First Amendment? This seems to be the most unconstitutional anti-First Amendment measure passed. Have any reporters aggressively asked that over and over to the Republicans? No, they let them slide. They let them slide. Because why? Oh my God, Republicans, we can't criticize, oh my God, right? No, they should, and by the way, where are you, MSNBC? Why are you trumpeting this every night, right? No, don't fight back against Republicans.
Let's take our final break, and when we come back, finally, we'll get to that Oath Keeper story that I told you about earlier in the show. You do not want to miss the details on that.
Back on the Young Turks. First of all, don't forget your Too Strong Coffee, toostrongcoffee.com/TYT. Fair trade, organic, totally delicious, and gives to progressive causes. All right, don't forget this, toostrongcoffee.com/TYT. Don't forget that part. All right, Ashley D with a very nice message on YouTube Super Chat. Been watching TYT since I was 13. I'm 21 now. Now, I'm grateful for the commentary that's shaped my ideology for a large part of my life. Anna, in particular, has been a huge influence for me, so thank you. Keep your heads up.
Thank you.
She's been a huge influence for a lot of people. So, but Ashley, really appreciate you saying that, and really appreciate you being with us for 8 years. You're amazing. And I love doing the show.
I appreciate you for watching the show as long as you have and not being in the mood that I'm in today, which is honestly defeated, angry, salty. Like, I'm not like this every day. I'm like that today. The first thing I watched today was that video of that elderly woman getting beat up. And days like that, they're just hard. So I'll be better tomorrow. So thank you for bearing with me today. Hopefully I can gather myself and be a little better tomorrow.
Yeah, speaking of which, Jason R writes in, Cenk, I have a lifelong childhood friend that became a cop and then a sergeant in drug crimes. It has changed him and he has become terribly racist and hateful to people of color. It's so sad. It's real, guys. So we got to do something about it. But so that goes to Arthur Ashbrook, who wrote in on Super Chat. Do you think you might run for office again? So the answer is no, I'm not gonna run for office again, but the yes and the no are the interesting parts. I mean, I look at what's happening in Congress now, and I think, damn it, I wish I won. And the reason is because there's nobody fighting back. So you think they're gonna do police reform, meaningful police reform? No. Biden the other day, gun control? No. The other day, Biden gave like meaningless, tiny little measures on gun control. Did progressives do giant speeches on the floor of the House? Nothing, not a peep. right? So they did a good job on the refugee cap. They were very strong, thank God. I can't wait to give them credit, right? It's $15 minimum wage, not a peep, no leadership, nothing. So that's why, it makes me go, somebody get in there and do something. NinaTurner.com/hello. But the reason it's an overwhelming no, other than the fact that I love this job, and that running made me so appreciative of this job and how important it is, etc. The second part of it is, no, the media decides every election. And so every time I run, they will smear me and they will never give context. They will lie. And so you have no chance when the media says, at this day and age, hopefully this is gonna change. I'm optimistic, but right now, no, if you're a progressive like me that's a fighter, they despise you and they will try to bury you in every way. So that's just the reality, okay? Sierra Lee wrote in the member section, quick side comment, I like when TYT co-hosts explain and defend their own positions. All right, back on TYT, Jen Canano with you guys. I'm gonna read one member comment here, tyt.com/join to become a member. Sierra Lee wrote in, TYT co-hosts explain and defend their own positions. My parents think TYT is just an enclave of people who only agree with each other. While we agree on the same fundamentals, we still have diversity in our thoughts, and that's why progressives rock and we're America's heroes, I guess.
Yeah, can I actually add to that? Because I think people are just fundamentally misunderstanding what I mean when I'm talking about Maxine Waters. I agree with what Maxine Waters is saying. I'm trying to make an argument that anything that threatens the prosecution of that terrible person should be avoided, right? Because look, the fact of the matter is Republicans, I know it's Fox News. I know that that's what leads to the double standard between Democrats and Republicans on these issues. Unfortunately, that exists. Technicalities that get bad guys off exists, and I don't want to threaten that prosecution. Now, if the jury ends up finding him not guilty, Maxine Waters, any politician, have at it, right? I'm terrified that upon appeal, I mean, you saw the defense just try that with the mistrial. Upon appeal, they're gonna cite that, and what if it works? What if it's effective? That's all I'm saying. I want to see Derek Chauvin in prison. But do I agree with Maxine Waters? Yes, I do. I just don't threaten the prosecution, hold fire.
I hear you. All right, let's go forward.
All right, let's talk about the Oath Keepers. During a 60 Minutes interview, one of the Oath Keepers, in fact, the vice president for the Oath Keepers, they're very official with their hierarchy, said that current police who are serving in the police force have worked to train these right-wing gang members. Let me give you the details from Jim Arroyo, who spoke to 60 Minutes. He says, our guys are very experienced. We have active duty law enforcement in our organization that are helping to train us. We can blend in with our law enforcement. In fact, in a lot of cases, our training is much more advanced because of our military backgrounds. And a dozen members of the Oath Keepers, of course, have been charged in connection with the riots that took place in the Capitol on January 6th. Arroyo says that he was not present during those riots and claims that he disagrees with the violence that was committed on that day. But he also says this, I want to congratulate Stuart Rhodes and his 10 militia buddies for winning first place in the ultimate dumbass contest, because that's what it is. This goes against everything we've ever taught, everything we believe in. It was pre-planned, it was pre-staged. 10 guys go and do something stupid and suddenly we're the devil. But I mean, what do the Oath Keepers stand for? This is what the Oath Keepers are all about. They're anti-government. Many of them are white nationalists. Violence is what we've seen them carry out in case after case. Why is he pretending like this is not a specific characteristic tied to the Oath Keepers?
Well, it's interesting. I had a different interpretation of that quote. I'm not positive that I'm right, but I sense that he was saying they shouldn't have pre-planned it because we're better off when we're separate cells. And it honestly reminded me of a terrorist group saying if you pre-plan, they could then trace it back to leadership, and that could be a problem. So just make sure that you commit these things is kind of like lone wolf situations where we encourage this kind of activity, but we don't have our fingerprints on it. And they're very cognizant of law enforcement, partly because they don't want to get caught. Part of the reason that they're getting trained by cops across the country is because they want to blend in, and he explained that too. So they want to blend in with the cops. So, look, I mentioned it earlier in the show. If we had a couple of black cops training new Black Panthers on how to meld in with the cops and get away with things, and their anti-government stance, there would be a national movement. Fox News would talk about it every night. They'd be hunted down. Those cops would be hunted down until they found who the few bad apples were. If you did it against an oil pipeline, imagine cops teaching protesters how to, circumvent the law when it comes to blocking an oil pipeline. There'd be a national manhunt for those cops working with no good left-wingers, no good African Americans, etc. That would be the mindset. We hear, cops across the country are working with Oath Keepers. Nah. You know why? Part of our assumption is, right-wingers are always right, and they actually run the country, and they should run the country, so it's not that big a deal. That's our baseline assumption as to why people's hair isn't on fire.
Well, just to give you a little more insight, in August of 2020, an FBI agent named Michael German reported on US law enforcement failing to control the right-wing terrorists in their ranks, something that we talk about quite a bit on this show. So according to his findings, law enforcement officials are increasingly tied to racist militant activities in more than a dozen states since 2000. I'm sure it dates back much, far back, further than that. His report explained that over the years, police had grown increasingly linked to militias and white supremacist groups in Alabama, California, Connecticut, Florida, Illinois, pretty much every single state, Michigan, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Oregon, Texas, Virginia, Washington, and West Virginia. But again, I would argue that states not even included in that list have very similar problems. Professor Vita Johnson authored a paper in 2019 that included a list of more than 100 police departments in 49 states that have faced scandals over racist texts, emails, or public social media posts by officers just since 2009. And guess what? They were rewarded in Florida, where Governor Ron DeSantis just signed a piece of legislation indicating that if protesters are blocking the roads, if the cops or anyone else just happens to run over them, well, they have immunity now. It's totally fine. It's okay. And of course, that's a response to Black Lives Matter and the protests that have been happening as a result of police violence against the African American community.
Yeah, I gotta say here, mea culpa on how naive I was, especially when I was younger, about cops. Like if you told me that there were like tons of racist cops back when I was growing up, I would say, oh, no way. You know why? I grew up in a suburb. And so,
because the cops actually did protect and serve you.
Yeah.
You could call the cops and they would look out for you, right? And that gave you a different perspective than all the people who have been brutalized by cops in poor neighborhoods, in cities, in diverse areas of the country. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, talk to Chuy Martinez, who's a radio personality here in LA. And he said when he was growing up in a poor Latino area of Arizona, he had to keep his report card with him because every time the cops pulled him over, he had to show him he was a good student and not a criminal. He was like 12 at the time, okay? And I said, how often did you get pulled over? 2 or 3 times a week. When, how, why? Well, we'd be playing basketball in our neighborhood next to my house, everybody up against the wall, nonstop, right? That's just considered normal in America. That we take a certain percentage of our population and we say, okay, you have a different skin tone and you're poor. Oh, we're gonna kick the crap out of you. We're gonna assume you're guilty and etc. And everybody else, right wingers, are gonna protect you. So I was naive. And guys, I'm asking you to open your eyes. So if you have the perspective where the cops have protected you your whole life, understand that's not the only perspective. And so it turns out that's not how they treat everybody. And millions of African Americans and Latinos in this country are not lying in unison. So we should accept no racism among our cops. Those guys have badges and they have guns. We cannot have them out there treating black people and Latinos and God knows who else with this kind of hatred and fear and all the things that spring from it. But unfortunately in America, that's considered normal.
One of our members just commented in, I think Ari is her name, about how cops will just kill people or rough people up with body cameras on. They don't care.
Because they're so used to it.
They don't care.
Because they don't think they're doing anything wrong. Because they were taught to rough people up. And they think, what? I just did the thing you told me to do. They disrespected me. So I, broke a 73-year-old woman's shoulder. She had it coming. And then I told her, why'd you make me do this? That's their training. We got to get it out, but nobody's doing a goddamn thing about it.
Well, one final story for you before we go to postgame. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's, yes, still a congresswoman, was forced to walk back plans for a new House caucus that was meant to promote uniquely Anglo-Saxon political traditions. Now, she threw her own staff under the bus after there was a document leaked to the press, essentially indicating what this would really all be about. It was racist, but more importantly, the GOP, which has gone after her for this, probably didn't like the fact that this House caucus would also require lawmakers to pay dues. And I don't think the House Freedom Caucus liked that so much. But they're pretending like this is really about how they don't want to be known as the racist party as they do racist things. The congresswoman wants to make clear that she's not launching anything. This was an early planning proposal and nothing was agreed to or approved. That's according to one of Marjorie Taylor Greene's spokespeople. And I'm gonna actually fast forward to her throwing her staff under the bus. She says, very soon I'll be introducing a resolution to expel, my bad, this is not the tweet I was looking for. In a tweet on Friday, she said, on Friday, sick and evil POS, you know what that means, in the media attacked me with phrases I never said or wrote. They released a staff level draft proposal from an outside group that I hadn't read. The scum and liars in the media are calling me racist by taking something out of context. I'm pretty sure they're calling you racist because you're racist. I mean, you've shown that on multiple occasions, including going after Muslim members of Congress who decided to swear on the Quran as opposed to the Holy Bible, right? So that's in the very least Islamophobic, but she's done other things that are clearly racist, Cenk.
Yeah, this is an easy way to solve this. Then tell us that that obviously saying that the country's built on Anglo-Saxon tradition is wrong. That's incorrect. It was built on the backs of black people as well, okay? Not exclusively, but certainly as well. It was built on the back of Chinese immigrants that built the railroads and so many other things, and let alone Latino immigrants and all of us, Italians, Jews, Muslims, etc., right? So tell us about the rich diversity and tradition of America as it currently stands. Oh, you're not gonna do that because you actually do think it was Anglo-Saxon. So it's easy to say, oh, my staff did it, or somebody else's staff did it, and maybe that's true. And that's why I say, easily solved by telling us what your real opinions are. So you call the media scum and liars, maybe. Then you turn around and say, what about Anglo-Saxon tradition, which is an obvious racist term? What do you mean Anglo-Saxon tradition? We're past Judeo-Christian now, right? Now we're doing very, very specifically Anglo-Saxon, which means white, 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 white. That's just nothing but racism. There's 4 people who signed on to that according to the press. Louis Gohmert, Paul Gosar, etc. But Matt Gaetz is asking to be let in, and they might not even let him, okay? So all of you guys tell us if you don't really believe it and what you actually believe. They all say no, we believe in America first, but we don't like that draft because that got us in trouble. Oh, okay.
So the House Minority Leader, Kevin McCarthy, is like, we are the party of Lincoln. This is not what we represent, pushing back against it. Look, honestly, I think it has to do with the fact that if this caucus existed, it would require dues. House Freedom Caucus, they don't like that, right? But really, you guys, you're gonna pretend like you guys aren't, like, these are the people who stood up for the white nationalists and neo-Nazis who chanted, the Jews will not replace us. You guys are the racist party, it's abundantly clear.
Yeah, but I think it's more than the Jews. I think McCarthy and the others pulled him aside and said, this is giving all of us a brand that we can't recover from. So remember, keep it to dog whistles. Our racism is supposed to be covered up, just apparent to our voters, but not to the general public. All right, members get the next episode, so stay right here.
So a lot of progressive office holders are doing something fun. I like fun. They're doing the last 2 years in 2 minutes. Okay, we're gonna try it here. First, I wanna let you guys know about the years before that. Hey, remember, we started the Just Democrats here on the Young Turks. It was officially launched on our air, basically by you guys. And then we featured AOC, we featured Cori Bush, and Ro Khanna became the first ever Just Democrat incumbent, all on the Young Turks. Now, the last 2 years have been a spectacular follow-up to that. So let's put the 2 minutes on the clock and do this. Young Turks got to start back in 2002, and I think we've been an important part of the progressive movement ever since. What we mainly do is amplify the progressive voice and candidates out there, and I think we've done a pretty good job. Right now, we're currently #1 most engaged news politics network online, beating CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC, all of them. We're #1 in total minutes watched. That means not only the number of people watching, but how long they watch. We just crossed 20 million followers and 500 million monthly views. Now, why? That's because actually the country's progressive. It's 2/3 progressive. And you guys have allowed us to be your voice, and we're incredibly thankful for that. So what did we do with that voice? Well, let's look at 2019. We went all over the country talking to you guys and the candidates. So we were in Miami, we were in Detroit, we were in Houston, and we were in Iowa. In fact, we were all over Iowa. You guys were all over Iowa, and all of the candidates saw you guys. We had wonderful people speaking, like the one and only Nina Turner at our rallies. Bernie Sanders stopped by, Andrew Yang, Elizabeth Warren. We interviewed almost everyone on the campaign trail, with the exception of Biden and Buttigieg. And we held them accountable. We even did a progressive economic pledge, and so many wonderful people signed on to that. Bernie Sanders, Warren, Marianne Williamson, AOC, the entire squad, Justice Democrats, and so many others. Now, on top of all that, we started a show called The Conversation, where we featured so many progressive thinkers, writers, and candidates. And one of the candidates we featured in 2019 was Jamal Bowman. Here comes Jamal Bowman. Then we had an amazing 2020. We hired a climate reporter. Damage Report passed 500,000 subscribers. Young Turks passed 5 million subscribers. We're getting the message out to more and more people. Bernie Sanders comes on in the heat of the primary. He comes on after the election to say what we're gonna do for the future. And then Marie Newman wins. Jamal Bowman wins. Cori Bush wins. And then just when you thought it couldn't get any better, here comes Nina Turner. Hello, somebody. And she's running for Congress, and she comes on the Young Turks first. On election week, we had nearly 2 million hours of viewing. We're #1 destination for progressives. You made all that happen. This is amazing, and thank you for those 2 years. What, I went past 2 minutes? Of course!
Viewers had asked for an interview with the TYT Lizard. Mr. Lizard. Oh, you changed colors today. Nice. I don't even know how you feel about us. Do you even like us?
Well, you guys made me this awesome house, so I'm kind of in your debt. I was found outside on the street, and you gave me a home. Granted, it was a really crappy home for a while, but then through the power of fundraising, I became a person who has a multi-level Trump-style mansion.
You do. By the way, you never looked better, man. Normally, you're just green or just brown, but today you're in mid-lizard, right?
I'm not very smart. I'm a lizard, so I don't know how the science works. I guess this is just my mood. It's not every day that thresholds like this are broken. I'm just so excited. I can't contain my pigmentation.
And now you're showing it off.
Yep.
Yeah, I've never seen the lizard like this before.
All right, all right, all right.
You just gotta keep living, man. LIVIN.
All right, all right, all right. All right, all right, all right.
All right, back in the post game. Bart likes to be thematic.
He
We're
is.
going to discuss Matthew McConaughey in the postgame, and hence that's why you heard that intro. But first, Cuckoo, Mr. Robinson has just joined us. So thank you for becoming a member. Clayton Phipps and Mason Neal, they all joined on YouTube. Bless your hearts. All right, but I'm going to read a couple of comments here, and then Anna has a random rant, which I'm looking forward to. Jan Elephant wrote in, hello TYT, love seeing you in the studio again. Don't worry, Anna, the salt is warranted. Right now it's a scary, unwelcoming time to be a bipolar Asian American woman. You guys give me courage. So that's awesome, we love you for it. I hope you're still watching, I hope you're a member so you could see that. But Sophia Smirnoff says, please know how many appreciate you both in TYT. Thank you, today was such a hard day. Yes. One of the times I've cried, old lady videos hurt my soul.
Yeah, I don't know, like I have this vulnerability, like my emotions are very vulnerable whenever there's elderly people involved. It's just like, I think it's like a mix of knowing what elderly people who are suffering from dementia are like, how helpless they can be, and also like it brings up my own fears about growing old, right? And finding yourself in a situation like that where you're defenseless, like it's terrifying.
That's interesting. No, I remembered today because I knew you were having a tough time throughout the day. And I remembered the Buffalo story of the guy who got pushed down and how emotional you got.
Yeah.
It's definitely, first of all, it's a thing for all of us, right? We're humans, and seeing people who are defenseless, kids and the elderly being abused, if you're a decent human being, triggers every, piece of your DNA about rage and injustice, etc., right? And so I think that makes you a good person to want to fight back against that system. Unfortunately, none of our politicians are that way. But anyways, but yes, it's very tough to deal with. It's interesting what you say about you growing elderly, though. See, that's the one part that I don't connect with. Everybody's different, right? Me, like I've been saying this on Old School for years now. I'm almost kind of looking forward to being old because I like no more pressure and stress.
Everyone around you dies, you're alone, it's awful. Growing old sucks. It's one of the worst things in the world. It really is.
I hear you, but
I hope I go before my husband. Hope and pray. Like I'm serious. Like I don't want to go through that. I don't know how people keep going. How do they keep going?
Yeah, I hear you. But age isn't coming for me. I'm coming for age.
See.
But guys, every day is precious. Every day is precious.
Yeah.
So there's more, and I love you guys for writing in, and I want to thank the Buddha Chris for 1,000 bits on Twitch, and a great point about Maxine Waters. My bad that I didn't make it. Says the legal point the judge made is that if she's threatening voting guilty will lead to violence, that could taint the jury. Okay, I hear you. Now that I've calmed down, that's a good point, and that's basically what Anna was saying. So thank you for participating in the show.
And for the viewers who kind of like were challenging me on that on Twitter, thank you for also being understanding once I took some time to explain where I was coming from. Anyway, I'm not gonna be understanding though to the people who are pushing back against stuff that I tweeted this morning about the housing market. It's driving me crazy. Okay. It drives me crazy when anyone, I don't care if you're on the left, I don't care if you're on the right, I don't care what your political ideology is. When the solution to what we're experiencing in this country with housing is just simply, we just need to build more houses. That's it. We just need to build more houses, more houses. Okay, look, I'm not against building more houses. I agree that that's part of the solution. But before we do that, how about we deal with the fact that we have people who don't even live in this country, okay? We have private equity firms that are foreign or oligarchs in other countries snatching up the properties we have available now. We have no regulations against that, guys. We have private equity firms in this country that are snatching up new developments. In California, for instance, there's a housing shortage. Okay, if there's a housing shortage, why are developers literally right now as we speak building entire neighborhoods with the intention of selling those entire neighborhoods to private equity firms who then turn around and just become slumlords renting out those homes in that community? That's happening right now. The Wall Street Journal reported on it. Please stop falling for what the National Realtors Association argues is part of the crisis, is the only part of the crisis, that we need to build more houses. No, we need regulations to ban foreign investment. If you're not gonna live in the house, you don't get to buy the house, okay? Like, these are common sense measures we can take. And I love how some people are just like, the left is against foreign investment. Damn right I am. I'm against foreign capital flooding the housing market and pricing all of us out. I'm against that. I don't care if it's an anti-left or anti-right talking point. I don't care, okay? It doesn't make sense. And we also need to stop speculators and private equity in the United States from buying these homes because it's a good place to park their money. If there's really a housing crisis, then we need to actually address it head on with the right regulation. Because I guarantee you build more houses, which we're doing right now, and they're gonna buy them up. And they're doing it right now as we speak. People drive me crazy. They drive me crazy. No, but the National Realtors Association told me that we need to build more houses. That's the only problem. It's not the only problem.
Okay.
The fact that it's a commodity and is treated as nothing more than an investment is the problem. That's the problem. That's the problem.
There might or might not be 3 people in the country more passionate about housing than Ana Kasparian.
You guys, all day, every day, every free moment I have, I'm reading up on this stuff. I'm currently reading Aaron Glantz's book, and you guys should check that out. After the 2008 economic crisis, you know what Obama did? He made it easier for private equity firms to snatch up these homes.
Yeah, and so the only reason, well, or not the only reason, but the main reason I brought that up, Ana, though, is that a lot of people don't know what you know. Almost no one knows what you know, right? I didn't even know what you knew, right? So when you started sending me the articles and the Aaron Glantz interview, et cetera, about housing, that's when it started to click for me that, the private equity guys are buying the houses because people don't have the money anymore after the crash to put down payments.
Right.
So they're stuck renting. And so then the finance community says, oh great, remember when we crashed the economy? We created an opportunity for ourselves to then go and after foreclosing on all their homes, make them permanent renters so they don't get the equity value of their house, we get the equity value.
They did it on purpose, guys. The scarcity is created, like the scarcity is on purpose. So you can build more homes, but if you don't do away with the virus within the system, they're just gonna buy more homes. They're doing it right now with new construction. They're doing it right now. And yes, you're right, maybe I need to be more patient. But people who are just like, you're actually very racist because you don't want foreign investment in US real estate. Okay, I guess that makes me racist.
No.
I guess that makes me a bad person, that I want people in this country who are priced out of neighborhoods and priced out of homes to be able to buy a home.
No, look.
Maybe I want that.
No, those people might just be misguided.
Someone think of the foreign investors, please. Think of the foreign investors.
Well, no one think of the Saudi investors. Those poor guys, they never catch a break. So look, I don't know if that person was real. It's possible. There's plenty of misguided folks in the world. But I actually think that just a lot of these accounts are totally bots and trolls, right? So like really there's somebody who thinks being concerned about Saudi, Russian, Chinese, et cetera, investors coming in, gobbling up tons of real estate in places like LA and New York is a racist proposition. Nobody, I mean, maybe there's like one rando out there or 3 randos in the whole country who think that, but that's not a real thing.
They think it's nativist.
No, they don't. There's no progressive who thinks remember Trump used to say, well, I'm not supposed to like the Saudis, they're buying my apartments for $30-40 million. Nobody thinks that preventing Saudis from money laundering by buying Trump's apartments is part of a nativist issue. That's not a thing. And look, I criticized Kristen Sinema and a guy that has a rose and hence pretending to be a socialist on Twitter, right? Says, you're just attacking her because you're a misogynist.
Oh yeah, that's exactly what's happening.
No, but wait a minute, wait a minute. Why would a socialist be protecting Kristen Sinema, who's among the top 2 corporate Democrats in the country? It makes no sense at all, right? And why would they be attacking a progressive who's worried about the corrupting influence of money? Look, a ton of people hate me, so it's not impossible for a socialist to hate me. That's Tuesday, right? Everybody hates me, right? But at least if you judge by my Twitter mentions. But my point is that seemed awfully unlikely.
Right.
And so there's tons and tons of people that are not really people on Twitter. And I notice, and I say that all in the context of this is another important thing. I notice that when I do tweets against the establishment, there are more people in my Twitter mentions that rise up and do random charges. Random stuff, right? So I think the establishment trolls or bots or whatever they are, I think they're real. I think there's bots from a lot of different camps.
There's a ton of them. You're right. And so
and what do? They flip. And remember how we did the story on this, right? They flip the charge against you. If you're not racist, they'll call you racist, right? If you're a woman, they'll call you, it doesn't matter, they'll call you anti-male, anti-female, whatever. Whatever they think is not, it's not about getting under your skin. It might be a little bit of psyops. But mainly it's about trying to trick your audience.
Right, yes.
Because they know your audience cares deeply about racism and not being nativist. So they accuse you of being a nativist and they accuse you of being racist so that they can get your progressive audience to question you.
Yeah, look.
It's bot 101.
Sure.
You see what I'm saying?
And look, I'm gonna stand by what I said. You can call me whatever the hell you want. Okay, I don't care.
Nonetheless.
Okay, whether it's a private investment firm here in the United States or in freaking China or Russia, I don't care. Okay, if we have a housing shortage, then we ensure that the people living in this country have homes before we open up the market to anyone else. Period. It's common sense. And then if we find that there is a shortage of housing, yes, please build away. But the problem is the construction is happening already. We see it already. And what happens with those homes? Do they get sold to couples who are just looking for a starter home? No, they get sold to the private equity firms. That's the problem that needs to be banned. Period. That's what I'm saying. All right, that was a random rant, I know, but it's been like eating away at me all day, so it felt really good to get it out. And now we can move on to other stuff.
I mean, what do we do the show for, right? To get our rants out.
That's actually pretty true, especially the post game. That's what I'm just like, all right, let me let loose and tell people what I'm really thinking right now that's not in the rundown.
I'm looking at the monitor. Man, I got a 10 in it.
My hair looks really good, I will say that. I keep looking at it like, looking nice, looking nice. Okay, all right, let's get to the stories though, because we do have some stories to share with you.
Hashtag unbearable.
So, Matthew McConaughey has hinted that maybe he would run for office at some point. So a new survey found that if he were to run for governor, what percentage of voters would vote for him over the current governor of Texas, Greg Abbott? And I want to give you the details. Now, this is a poll that was released by the Dallas Morning News and the University of Texas at Tyler. And apparently the Hollywood star, if he were to run, would get quite a bit of the vote. So if Matthew McConaughey were to run, the poll of 1,126 registered voters found that 45% of them would back him. That would give McConaughey a 12-point lead over the current governor, Governor Greg Abbott, polling at 33% among those surveyed. Now, when this story was first brought to my attention, I had a negative reaction to it. I slugged the story, just kill me already. But then I thought about the context in California, where Arnold Schwarzenegger won as governor when the governor at the time was recalled. Gray Davis, I believe, was the right. Gray Davis was the governor who was recalled, and then Arnold Schwarzenegger won, and he became governor. The current governor right now is Eric Garcetti. I'm sorry, Gavin Newsom, and he is a disaster. Eric Garcetti in Los Angeles is the mayor, disaster. And you know what, Schwarzenegger? I'm sure he had lots of flaws. Don't get me wrong. Not so bad. Not so bad compared to what we're experiencing now. So who knows? Maybe look, Greg Abbott is awful. Could it get worse than that? And Matthew McConaughey is, look, he's a Trump supporter and all of that, but hey, if you want to take risks with your state, why not? Can't get worse than Greg Abbott.
Yeah, so I think this is actually an important story on a couple of grounds. And I don't know that McConaughey is a Trump supporter. McConaughey in the recent interviews has said that he thinks that we got to be respectful to both sides, we got to bring people together. It sounds like, Biden-esque with a little bit of right-wing populism sprinkled in there. I can't really tell. I can't.
What is this B-roll?
I know it's well, good for him. He's a good-looking guy. So I don't know what his opinion is. Would I take him over Greg Abbott, sight unseen about his policies? Yes. Why? Because I already know who Greg Abbott is. That's the devil I know, and I don't want the devil I know. Okay, you name it, he's done it. What they did during that freeze in Texas was unbelievable. So they let the electric companies not do any protections. They deregulated the hell out of them. They got paid. Abbott himself got millions of dollars in contributions from those same energy companies, and then people froze to death, and they never fixed a thing, right? And I can go on and on. So would I take a rando celebrity over Abbott? Yeah, and a rando one, not like, John Voight.
Yeah, I was just gonna say John Voight. Yeah,
right. Ted Nugent.
Yeah,
etc. You get it, right? Now, but the reason I tell you that is because what's amazing about celebrities and politics and how the rest of the media doesn't understand how politics works is that 30% of Republicans said they'd vote for McConaughey. That's a giant number. They don't know anything about McConaughey. He hasn't put out any of his policy proposals. They don't know a single thing about what he believes. And 30% of Republicans who might hate him if they found out what he believes, we don't know yet, are like, oh, he's a celebrity, I'm gonna vote for that guy.
Well, yeah, I mean, it goes back to the most important thing if you've decided to run for office, and that's name recognition. Yeah. Matthew McConaughey has name recognition. I don't know how he would govern. And look, if I had a choice between Matthew McConaughey and someone who's actually connected to people, a working class person who knows what it's like to be a normal human living in normal conditions, which are awful conditions in the United States right now, yeah, I would choose that person because there's an actual connection with people. And I think that person would have a better chance at representing the best interests of constituents. But again, in this particular context, if it's between Greg Abbott or Matthew McConaughey, sure, I'll take my chances with McConaughey because Greg Abbott is disastrous. Yeah. He did deregulate or help deregulate the energy companies in Texas. You're absolutely right about that. And as a result, those energy companies didn't weatherize their equipment. And that led to people losing power during a brutal winter storm.
Yeah.
He's awful.
Yeah, so look, again, if you are against Greg Abbott, you're a Democrat or independent who doesn't like him, going with someone else makes sense. If you're a Republican, without knowing who the guy is, going to him doesn't make sense. But I'll come back to that because Anna made a really great point in there. But the reason why I would take a random actor that I don't know the opinions of, one, Abbott's the worst. You can't get worse than him, almost, right? But number two, a lot of the actors grew up poor. Matthew McConaughey lived in a, even after he got rich, he lived in a trailer camp.
Did he?
Yeah, but it's a misleading one in Malibu, right? But still,
it's like a luxury.
Right,
okay.
right. But still, he,
Not still, that's different.
I know it's different. But I forget his background now. I thought I read it once, but I'm not positive. But a lot of the actors grew up poor. And so that gives them a little bit of perspective that politicians might not have. But most importantly, they're not already immersed in the culture of corruption. Greg Abbott rose up through the political ranks by doing favors for his donors. So it's in his DNA. That's what got him to governorship in the first place, is by kissing corporate ass. So McConaughey being wealthy and not having grown up in that culture of political corruption might be unfettered and might, even if he's right wing, might make honest decisions as a right winger as opposed to corrupt decisions. And I would still rather have an honest right winger than a corrupt right winger. So even if he turns out badly, but probably the most important point is the one that Anna mentioned here. The media totally misunderstands politics. They're like, oh, can you believe people like celebrities for no reason? Well, it's not for no reason. Partly, I'm stunned that Republicans are, not stunned, I'm amused and slightly surprised that Republicans are like, I don't know, I'll take a rando, even though he might not agree with me, and I got a Republican governor. But I don't dismiss it. And then, but the media will then turn around and say, oh, someone who's run for office again, people really like his experience. No, it's not that they like his experience and they like McConaughey for no reason. It's that they both have high name recognition. Mostly people don't like the experience of politicians because they don't like politicians, but they know their names if they've been around for 10, 20, 30 years, right? And why does McConaughey do well? Why did Schwarzenegger do well? Because people know their names. Politics is all about name recognition and branding. Our media has no clue how to cover politics. And they don't know how much they affect the game through their coverage. And so McConaughey would get overwhelming coverage and doesn't even need overwhelming coverage because he has such great name recognition already.
Right.
That's why they win. That's why the celebrities win when they run. And that's the number one problem any new person has in politics, but especially progressives. Because why does it affect progressives more? Because Republicans just go to corporations and go, I'll do anything you want. Then corporations will give them or independent expenditure groups millions of dollars to run ads on their behalf. And what do the ads do? Increase their name recognition and their positive branding. So that's why money in politics is so important, because you can just buy name recognition, which progressives can't buy.
Right. So what you're saying is not Matthew McConaughey, but Matthew McConaughey.
Okay, look, at least we got the recognition that I'm not the only one who makes dad jokes around here.
Right. All right, we're gonna end with, I want to say fun, but it's not fun when you really think about it. Just a video that's gone viral, and it features a cute, cuddly animal. So there it is. You see someone saving a sheep.
Yeah.
All right, it's good to go. Everything's great.
Yes.
And then.
Oh, wait a minute, what happened? That was the biggest tease of all time.
Oh, that poor baby though.
I know, and they gotta pull her out. They gotta pull her out, okay?
All right, she's out. She's, yes, I'm free. And then boom. And that's what US politics feels like.
Oh, totally. That's so funny. We didn't talk about this before the show.
Yeah.
The minute I watched this video, I thought, Democrat. Like progressives work so hard and we're kind of hurting them a little bit, pulling them out of a ditch, and they're free. They're so happy. They're like, I'm going right back in the ditch. Oh, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why does that ditch exist?
Democrat. I'm sure it has a good reason. Agriculture, blah, 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 right? It's great problems with the sheep. Man, that sheep's got the same problem I have, spatial relations problem.
Oh, yeah.
You know, my spatial reasoning's not that good. We joke around about it on the show, right? I couldn't pack a trunk if my life depended on it. That's the Jenks sheep right there. He's like, I got this jump. Was it?
Didn't you like crash into Jesus's car a few times?
No, JR's.
Oh, JR's car. Okay.
Yeah, I hit JR's car in the parking lot because I'm like, well, it was.
Well, it's parked. Like he crashes into parked cars.
Okay, why did I crash into it? Because it was there.
Yeah.
I'm not good with it. I've gotten into many accidents, luckily only in parking lots. I once hit 3 cars at once in a parking lot. I am that sheep. Okay. So look, it's just a fun video, and I hope they got him back out of that second ditch, and I hope he can judge better a little next time on the jump. But the last thing is, I like the confidence of the sheep.
Oh,
when he took that last
jump,
he
was feeling himself.
Yeah, he was like, here we go. Whoa. Oh, that reminds me. That's the story that I've told before about when I was an extra in Deep Impact. So I'll just tell a snippet of the story here. So when we had a driving scene. So we're driving from Arlington to Georgetown over the Key Bridge, and I was an extra, and so I was in my car, and we get there. I desperately need money. I'm a broke talk show host, kind of on the radio, but mainly on public access. I'm a disaster. Okay, and so I need the money real bad, but I'm not great at driving, as I just explained. So in the morning they say, okay, we're gonna do like 10, 12 takes of this, and you drive across the bridge and then you come back. And I said, wait, come back how? How do we come back? Do we turn around somewhere? They're like, no, we're just gonna drive in reverse the whole bridge. And I was like, oh no, what have I done? Okay.
They were expecting you to drive in reverse?
Yeah, drive in reverse. It's a big, long bridge if you've ever been there, okay?
And they didn't have backup cameras back in the day.
And not only that, wait, it gets worse. Remember, there's a lot of cars. So we have to keep a certain pace as we're driving backwards. Otherwise, the car behind you or the car in front of you is gonna, okay?
That's not.
It's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, it's
right?
Look, I would panic, and I'm actually a pretty good driver. I'm really good at backing up into spaces. You? No.
So, but here comes the fun part. I mean, there's 1,000 fun parts to this story. Become a member. Well, some of you already are. Okay, anyways, and get the full story that I probably told on Old School in one of the episodes. Anyways, but in this portion of the story, so we we start doing it in the morning, and I do it about 2-3 times. I'm so nervous, and I back up. Okay, and then I think on the fourth one, I'm like, I got this.
Oh no.
Okay, so I start going a little faster. But when I realize, because I'm holding everybody up because I'm such a grandbot, right? But I realize, but I'm like, okay, I got this, I can go faster. But once I go faster, I start coming to the car behind me too quick. And now I'm driving in reverse too fast. And so I hit the brakes and I start swerving. And I almost hit Tia Leone. Okay.
Wow.
Okay, she's the star of the movie along with Morgan Freeman. And I'm like, on the bridge, right? And everyone's like, what the hell is going on, right? And then we all finally get back to our positions, and the producer comes and knocks on my window. And I'm like, what? I open the window. He's like, you almost just killed Tia Leone. What the hell are you doing? I was like, well, I thought I had it. I am that sheep. Stay strong, brother. You'll get it next time. Sorry, Tia.
You're crazy.
You're crazy, dog. Okay, all right, we're out of time, guys. We need you to have a great day. We need you to come back tomorrow. That's what we're gonna do. So we'll see you then.
Let me tell you this, the older you do get, the more rules are gonna try to get you to follow.